Hello readers by eyes and by ears, this is Mari Chan and welcome back to my channel. I am super excited because we are continuing with the reading of Remnants of Filth, but we are opening up volume 4 and we're covering a lot of chapters to open it. It's going to be chapters 98 through 105. I do want to go ahead and put out a disclaimer for my YouTubers that there is smut from chapters 103 to 105. However, it doesn't really get heavy until 104. So, you know the deal. Anyway, I hope you all enjoy. Chapter 98, Infiltration. Morsi and Goo Mahng looked out over the sunken area surrounded by dense forest. Crosses of petrified wood lined three sides, covered in chains and shackles. Execution platforms. An enormous blood pool was carved out of the middle. Skeletons tangled like flotsam as centuries' worth of the dead rose and fell on the churn of its bloody waves. The Firebat tribe had built a pavilion that extended over the pool's surface, lit by temple lamps balanced on delicate stands, each gleaming brightly in the glow of the night. The pavilion's construction was exquisite, but a closer inspection would make anyone nauseous. The ground that looked to be composed of fine sand and rounded cobblestones was in truth strewn with countless human teeth. As for those temple lamps, their stands were curving human spines and their bases human skulls. This pavilion was built from human bones. Morsi stared in silent distaste. "Huh! Look over there, in the middle," Goo Mahng exclaimed. Morsi glanced over. In the center of this pavilion that was like hell on earth sat a beautiful woman who appeared around 40 years old. She wore gauzy robes and splendid jewelry, with a gold and jade circlet resting atop her brow. Her aura was one of overwhelming luxury and poise. The other bat demons were like planets orbiting her star as they moved around her, trembling in fear as they waited on her whim. "This must be Wu Yan," Goo Mahng muttered. "How strange. She doesn't look like the peerless beauty in the first legend, nor the old demon hag in the second. She seems to be a pretty normal queen." Morsi knew Goo Mahng was referring to her looks and nothing else, because at that moment, a bat demon official in military uniform was kneeling at her feet. She was held down by two attendants, and half her face was covered in blood. One pointy bat ear had already been hacked off. Wu Yan twirled that ragged ear in her fingers, fiddling with it absent-mindedly. As they watched, she dipped her finger into the oozing blood, painting it over her shining nails as if applying cinnabar stain. "You searched all day and haven't found a thing," she said leisurely, still playing with the ear. "Instead, you allowed someone to kidnap this venerable one's medicine. Shunfangar, why should I let you live?" The official was shaking. Your Majesty, have mercy. This venerable one has shown more than enough mercy. You were in charge of guarding the pill room, yet this subordinate one's most important source of blood has slipped through your fingers." Wu Yan's tone was hard. Her red eyes narrowed. "Do you know this is a crime punishable by death?" The official trembled, unable to form words. Wu Yan raised her hand, fire blazing from her palm. In a blink, the angry flames burned the ear to ash. "Attendants, here." Pinky delicately raised, Wu Yan assessed her freshly painted nails, then pointed a red-tipped finger at the official kneeling on the ground. "Shunfangar is incompetent. Her mistake unpardonable. Throw her into the cauldron to be boiled alive." The cruelty of the punishment made both Goo Mahng and Morsi blanch. Your Majesty, spare me!" The official wailed hysterically. "I beg your Majesty, let me redeem myself. I'll catch Ajong and those little thieves who trespass onto the island. Your Majesty! Wu Yan ignored her completely. The attendants dragged the official away, her desperate screams piercing the dark forest like claws, tearing the night apart. It was a long time before they stopped. Wu Yan sighed. Had this venerable one not been so compassionate for so many hundreds of years, we wouldn't be suffering such incompetence. She looked up and addressed another bat demon kneeling by the pillar. Shunfangar's disciple? The bat demon squeaked in terror. Did you see how your Shifu ended up? I saw it. Wu Yan smiled thinly. Do you want to end up like her? No, I don't. Not at all. The Bat Queen's smile froze on her face. Where's your gratitude, then? Shouldn't you make yourself scarce and start tracking down the trespassers with the other squads? Yes. The disciple staggered to her feet and fled in abject terror. Wu Yan closed her eyes and leaned back against the soft cushions to rest. Afang, come, she said with a wave of her hand. Her handmaiden Afang hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. How many shrilling pills are left in our storeroom? Your Majesty, Miss Rongjong was sick the past few days, so her blood couldn't be used. Only 2 pills remain. 2 pills, Wu Yan sighed. In that case, I won't take one today. The yin energy in this blood pool is strong enough. I can delay it for a short while. Huh, so that's how it is, Goo Mahng said quietly. Morsi turned to look at him. I was confused why Wu Yan didn't personally track us down. Something so serious happened on her island, yet she only dispatched her subordinates with orders to kill. Now it makes sense, said Goo Mahng. She probably damaged her vital energy with her reckless cultivation method. Now she has to take a shrilling pill every day to relieve the pain. Without Rongjong, her sense of medicine's been cut off, so she's conserving her remaining shrilling pills until she gets Rongjong back. The next big thing is to stay by the blood pool instead of running about. Its yin energy will minimize the damage to her body. Goo Mahng prodded Morsi with his elbow. Hey. What? Do you still have that life crystal showing Yue Changqing's condition? I do, Morsi replied. What of it? If the queen doesn't plan on personally seeking us out, Mu Zhongsheng should have no problem fending off other demons. Goo Mahng paused. We came to rescue Yue Changqing, not to make trouble. We shouldn't fight if we don't have to. We have 2 objectives. Lift the curse from Yue Changqing and make it off this island safely. Well then, why not get closer to the queen and monitor her movements? She's set a barrier over the island to stop us escaping, but every barrier has its weak point. I'm thinking, if we study her, we can figure out where the barrier is weakest and escape when the time is right. Just keep an eye on Yue Changqing's crystal to make sure he's okay. Morsi thought it over and agreed. But how are you going to get close to her? About that. To be honest, sometimes the Liao Kingdom spells are much more useful than Chonghua's. With a snap of his fingers, a tiny flame appeared at Goo Mahng's fingertips. He tossed this flame toward the sky, where it instantly scattered into countless colorful butterflies that covered them both. You're casting a Liao Kingdom black magic spell on me? Morsi's voice was low but severe. He was almost inaudible, but Goo Mahng wasn't taking any risks. Reaching up, he gently tapped Morsi's lips. Little beauty, why are you fussing? Listen to Guga and hush. Morsi was rendered entirely speechless. Things like spells. If they're not hunting anyone, does it matter if they're from the Liao Kingdom or Chonghua? If they work, they work. Where did all these strict rules come from? More and more colorful butterflies gleaming with spiritual light amassed until the 2 of them were enveloped in a dazzling brilliance. Fortunately, Goo Mahng had set down a concealment spell beforehand, or they would have been instantly discovered by the fire bat patrols. The light glinting from the butterfly wings brightened to a blinding white before gradually winking out. Goo Mahng chuckled. Look at me now. Standing before Morsi was a pointy-eared fire bat maiden with a scarlet mark on her brow. Her face bright and pretty. Her slender, shining blue eyes peered at him over a charmingly sloped nose, and her lips seemed to curve mischievously even when she wasn't smiling. This bat demon had her own distinct beauty, but upon closer examination, each of her features were unmistakably Goo Mahng's. Morsi was flabbergasted. Illusion butterfly transformation technique. My own invention, Goo Mahng said, producing a little mirror from his Tiankun pouch. Take a look at yourself. Morsi grabbed his wrist and growled. You changed my face into a servant girl's too? Goo Mahng only smiled and held up the bronze mirror. Morsi had no desire to see such a terrifying reflection. He shoved the mirror back down. Goo Mahng held it up again, and Morsi again pushed it away. Finally, Goo Mahng relented. All right, I know your temper, so I transformed you into a guard. There's nothing for you to get mad over. He held up the mirror once more. Morsi shot a glance at his reflection and saw his features had indeed changed. He had gained a pair of pointy bat ears, and his skin had paled to a bone white with lips as red as if he'd drunk blood. He glanced downward. His black clothes, trimmed in gold, had likewise transformed, turning into robes identical to those of the Bat Island guards. Goo Mahng patted his shoulder. Let's go. Low-level bat demons surrounded the Blood Pool Pavilion, so the pair hid in the trees to await their opportunity. When a servant girl and a guard at last approached, they sprang out and struck them unconscious. Goo Mahng dragged the two bat demons into a secluded corner and collected their waist tokens. Put this on just to be safe. Goo Mahng and Morsi each took a waist token. After concealing their human sense, they slipped into a group of bat demons as they passed by. Yet it wasn't long before a burly female bat demon noticed the newcomers and began to berate them. Hold it! What's with the two of you? Don't you have work to do? This female bat demon had a deeply wrinkled face and carried a whip. She thrust her chin toward Goo Mahng and Morsi as she rebuked them with a hand on her hip. Her Majesty is displeased tonight. Don't you think you should wise up? Or do you want to be sucked dry and turned into leather? With a twitch of her hand and a shake of her flabby white arm, her whip cracked toward them like a swift snake. As the long whip was about to strike Goo Mahng's face, Morsi's hand shot out, catching the lash head on. Silence fell over the group. The rough whip had cut Morsi's palm open. Blood seeped between his fingers. What are you doing? The bat shouted. You dare defy me? Morsi looked up. You said it yourself. Her Majesty's mood is foul tonight. If she sees a servant girl with her face ruined for no reason and finds it inauspicious, I'm afraid we'll all be made into leather. Among demons, the Firebat tribe was not known to be particularly intelligent. Faced with this explanation, the female demon stared blankly and came up with no retort. At last, she snorted. Fine. I'll let you off this time, but see if I don't get you the next. Goo Mahng answered with a smile. Jie is right. I understand. I'll never do it again. This bat was quite slow-witted. She smugly snorted again and pulled back the leather whip, fastening it at her waist. Jie, actually, we're not idle, Goo Mahng wheedled. It's just that our companions were too fast. We were a step behind, and all of the work was snatched away. Jie, if you're willing, give me something to do. I'd like to take some of your burden. The bat demon looked him up and down. Little lass, you have a silver tongue in that pretty mouth. She thought it over and waved her hand. All right, go make up a plate of sweet melon and fresh fruit. Bring it to the inner courtyard. After giving her orders to Goo Mahng, she turned to glare at Morsi. And as for you, it's not your break time. Can't you keep it in your pants for 1 second? Stop trying to hook up with every female demon you see. Go patrol. Morsi had experienced his fair share of struggles. This wasn't the first time someone had ordered him around, but no one had ever ordered him around while daring to pelt him with words like, stop trying to hook up and keep it in your pants. His face was almost green as he glared back at the bat demon. What are you glaring for? You're a puny little guard. You dare defy your superiors? Jie, don't blame him, Goo Mahng hastily cut in. He was born with a face that begs to be punched. He looks like he's giving you attitude, but in reality, he thinks Jie's words are very wise. Is that so? The bat demon asked skeptically. Expression chilly, Morsi fell silent for a few moments, then stiffly spat. Yes. The bat demon was still suspicious. Goo Mahng shot Morsi a significant look. He obviously wanted him to explain himself more fully. Morsi could do nothing but grit his teeth and say, Madam, your advice is invaluable. In the future, I will certainly avoid immorality. Thank you for your wisdom. With the Bat Queen successfully diverted, Morsi and Goo Mahng split up to tackle separate tasks. The inner courtyard of the pavilion was the Queen's private quarters. Male guards were forbidden entry. Morsi went to patrol a different area of the blood pool, while Goo Mahng descended those steps made of human bone and carried a plate of fruit into the heart of the pavilion alone. As Goo Mahng turned a corner, a line of servant girls emerged. The demon at the front glanced at him. "Delivering fruit?" "Yes. Bring it to the agate pool. Her Majesty is there now." Of course, Goo Mahng had no idea where the agate pool was, but the bat demon subconsciously tilted her chin as she spoke. Goo Mahng was clever. He snapped up that tiny little detail and smiled. "Right away." Fruit platter in hand, he sought out Wu Yan. He soon found that this so-called agate pool was a heated bath filled with boiling blood. The human blood inside was millennia old, prevented from drying out or rotting by some unknown method unique to Fire Bat tribe. Steam slowly unfurled from its surface like a hot spring. Queen Wu Yan sat at the edge of the pool. She was already undressed. A scarlet bathrobe was draped carelessly over her shoulders, revealing snowy white arms and a good half of her ample bosom. Her jade-pale legs were like rippling milk, astonishingly tender as she dipped her toes into that thick blood and splashed up droplets like tiny red beans. Wu Yan's personal servant girl, Afang, was arranging her mistress's hair in preparation for her bath when she spotted Goo Mahng out the corner of her eye. "Your Majesty, the fruit is here," she said. "Would you like to bathe first or enjoy some refreshments?" "So many horrid things have happened today. I've had my fill on anger alone," Wu Yan said bitterly. "What's the point in eating?" Afang shot Goo Mahng a look, indicating that he should set down the plate of fruit and withdraw. Goo Mahng obeyed, depositing the platter and retreating to the side of the room with eyes lowered. He had no interest in watching women bathe. Besides, although Wu Yan maintained herself well, he couldn't miss the fine wrinkles at her waist and neck. Even if she was a demoness, it didn't feel right to see such intimate details. But what choice did he have? Any one of Wu Yan's movements might reveal the clues he needed. He watched her carefully, doing his best to avoid lingering on certain areas. Wu Yan shrugged off the red bathrobe that concealed her figure and slipped into the blood pool, completely naked. Closing her eyes, she sighed quietly in relief before stretching her arms and leaning against the side of the pool. She let her attendants scoop up the warm, flowing blood with small bamboo cups and poured it over her back. What Goo Mahng saw next left him astounded. Chapter 99. Xi the Concubine. As the hot blood washed over Wu Yan's skin, those fine wrinkles slowly vanished. Wu Yan's appearance was undergoing minute changes in the steam of the pool. The loose skin on her face became taut and flawless. The faint crease between her brows seemed to smooth. The sagging folds at the corners of her mouth gradually disappeared, and the fine lines on her lips faded to nothing. Her entire figure grew so tender and delicate that she resembled the first flower bud on an early spring branch. The blood bath transformed the dignified beauty of a lady in her 40s into the fresh loveliness of a gorgeous young maiden. She was exceedingly charming, like a white blossom soaking in the red blood pool. As she absorbed the blood of humans who'd perished thousands of years ago into her veins, her skin flushed with color and her features turned dewy and pristine. Wu Yan cupped a handful of blood in her palms, sipping delicately through scarlet lips. After a few swallows, her lashes fluttered open. Even her eyes had become as clear and pure as those of a girl in her 20s. Watching this outrageous scene unfold, Goo Mahng was struck by a realization. Wu Yan was the devastating beauty in the Liao Kingdom's legends, as well as the wrinkled and white-haired old hag. This Bat Queen couldn't figure out how to cultivate into immortality, and she did not merely fail, but even severely damaged her vital energy, making her age rapidly. A demon's natural lifespan was long. At Wu Yan's age, she should be in her prime. How could she possibly be willing to lose her beauty? The Xueling pill refined from the blood of the feather tribe should have the same effect as the agate pool. No, it must be even stronger. Not only could it repair Wu Yan's vital energy, it could restore her body's youth. Perhaps the blood pool could return her to her early 20s, and only briefly, but the Xueling pill... The Xueling pill probably returned her figure and features to her teenage appearance and kept them that way for a long time. Wu Yan soaked in the pool, its yin energy revitalizing her fully. She glowed with youth from the inside out. Even some of her unhappiness seemed to have dispersed. When she spoke again, her tone was relaxed. "Afang, say, who are these people who came to the island?" "According to the Shangao, there are 4 of them, all men," Afang replied. "But the Shangao swears a lot and never says anything reasonable, so that's all I could learn." 4 men. Wu Yan sniffed. This venerable one doesn't go out to kidnap people anymore. Yet these ants still come swarming to my island. They deserve to be made into my personal playthings. Afang said nothing. I was right, Goo Mahng thought. She didn't say keep them as playthings. She said make them. This Bat Queen really is carrying a torch for someone. That's why she used goo worms to change Yue Chengqing's features. Which poor bastard is so charming a Bat Queen would yearn madly for him all this time? Your Majesty, most humans live but a few decades. The last time, when that cultivator came to the island asking for medicine to save his mother, he only lasted a dozen years before he died. How long do you think you can play with these for? Wu Yan lifted a finger from the pool. Dark red beaded at its tip. They dared steal this venerable one's Feather Tribe medicine. After the way they've angered me, so what if they don't last long? Anyway, they're mere puppets. They're not... She paused. The innocent expression disappeared from her tender and tranquil face and was replaced with a seething madness even demonic magic couldn't disguise. They're not the real him. Your Majesty, forget it. I won't bring it up again. Wu Yan leaned back, head pillowed against the stones at the pool's rim. He's an immortal. She chuckled. But this venerable one lost real affection for that craven traitor long ago. After all these centuries, the only thing this venerable one can't forget is his handsome face. Creating an identical copy is nothing difficult. Goo Mahng was shocked. What? The man Wu Yan had set her eyes on was an immortal? But after the shock passed, things started to fall into place. Of course, why else would she so insistently defy her nature as a demon to cultivate, attempting to step onto the immortal path rather than the demonic way? It seemed it was because her Prince Charming was an immortal. Since antiquity, immortals and demons had stood opposed. How infatuated must this Bat Queen have been to try changing her own nature to be with such a man? And that immortal later became a traitor. He must have somehow disappointed her greatly. Not only did she fail to cultivate into an immortal, she ended up with a sickly body that was deteriorating in the prime of her life. Thus, her old infatuation had decayed into twisted obsession. She wasn't willing to meet any men who weren't of her tribe, but if a human man happened to trespass onto Bat Island, she would transform him into that remembered immortal, then toy with him and torture him to death. Looking at this demon, Goo Mahng thought her worthy of both hatred and pity. He couldn't help but sigh. Afang was still massaging Wu Yan's shoulders. Yes, we'll catch those 4 wretches, as well as the little rascal they wanted to snatch away. We'll feed them goo worms to change their faces, wipe their memories, and keep them on the island to serve your Majesty obediently. That's letting them off lightly. Wu Yan's mood was brightening. You always say just what I like to hear, she said, smiling. She turned her head. Bring the fruit over. This venerable one will partake. Goo Mahng gathered his wayward thoughts and calmly raised the white jade plate in both hands. He crossed over to the agate pool and knelt deferentially. Wu Yan picked through the fruit with slender snow-white fingers. Eventually, she pointed at a small pile of lychees. These. Peel them. Yes, Your Majesty, replied Goo Mahng. The servant girl hurried over with a small celadon bowl. Goo Mahng nimbly peeled the gleaming translucent lychees, 6 in all, and arranged them in the bowl. Wu Yan plucked one out and closed her cinnabar-stained lips around it, filling her mouth with its tangy sweetness. She savored it and said, These lychees are extraordinarily good today." Goo Mahng smiled but made no sound. He had placed a soul-recording spell on the plate of fruit when he brought it over, then layered some other illusion spells he had once thought useless for battle to hide its traces. Under the spellwork, the lychees tasted uncommonly sweet and delicious. His talent for spellcasting was outstanding, and the fire bats were exceptionally simple-minded. Goo Mahng's plan went off without a hitch. When Wu Yan ate the lychee, the soul-recording spell would disperse within her, absorbing all the memories Goo Mahng needed. Later, he would only need to recite the incantation, and this intangible spell would disengage from Wu Yan's mind, return to Goo Mahng, and present all the information it had collected. Wu Yan finished the fruit and wiped her fingers with a silken handkerchief offered by a servant girl. Sated, she lazily closed her eyes and reclined against the side of the pool to soak further. The most important step was completed. Goo Mahng sighed in relief, but a moment later, he heard Ah Feng ask, "Your Majesty, will you require a guard to service you tonight?" Goo Mahng choked mid-sigh. "Service?" Xuan Nu's dual cultivation method boosts longevity. This venerable one can't take a shrilling pill today, so I must collect yang to mend yin. Of course, a guard's services are required. Footnote number 1, Xuan Nu, also known as Dark Lady, the goddess of sex, longevity, and war. Returning to the reading. Goo Mahng stared in horrified silence. "Go make arrangements for this venerable one." "Yes, Your Majesty," replied Ah Feng. Ah Feng left, while Wu Yan remained in the blood pool. This beauty seemed like a female ghost that had crawled out of purgatory, indescribably exquisite. She stuck out a pinky, studying the vermilion at her fingertips, then said absently, "This venerable one is in an ill humor today. Prepare some fragrance and liven things up for me." "At once, Your Majesty." 2 bat demons came forward from either side, each holding a teardrop-shaped crystal bottle filled with petal-pink flower nectar incense. They knelt by the pool, bending their elegant necks to pour the perfume into the crimson blood. Within seconds, the hall filled with fragrance, its heady scent dispersing throughout the entire pavilion and drifting outward. The scent was syrupy sweet, a kind of fragrance Goo Mahng had never smelled before. It seemed to be a blend of all the scents he liked. He smelled grass, the perfume of a lotus pond in summer, and the clear sweetness of honey. As he marveled that there could be a scent on earth so perfectly suited to his tastes, he saw out the corner of his eye the expressions of intoxication on the faces of the other bat demons. Now, that was a bad sign. This fragrance must be like the ephemera Mu Zhonglian smoked. It had a hypnotic effect. Goo Mahng shook his head vigorously and began circulating spiritual energy to suppress the incense's effects. Refocusing his mind, he looked around again. As expected, all the demons in the pavilion wore expressions of perfect bliss, as if they might ascend to heaven at any moment. Wu Yan leaned against the side of the blood pool, her features becoming increasingly alluring under the influence of the incense. She was as languid and soft as rich spring soil, her coquettish eyes like rippling silk, her carmine lips lightly parted. This gentle, illusory fragrance bled outward like ink on paper. A short time later, Ah Feng returned. "Your Majesty, the guards." A row of bat demons filed into the pavilion behind her. All had broad shoulders and narrow waists, their faces compellingly handsome. Goo Mahng swept a glance across them, his eye immediately catching on the one with the most gallant features. As expected, Morsi's name had been called, but judging by his expression, he didn't yet know why. He knitted his sword-like brows, eyes skimming the group of demons before him. His gaze paused fleetingly on Goo Mahng, then slid away, some faint confusion showing in his eyes. Oh no, thought Goo Mahng. Morsi was the type who was beautiful but oblivious. Usually, his glacial expression was sufficient to reject a crowd of wild admirers, dashing their hopes with a single sharp look. Yet as soon as he encountered something he didn't understand, confusion would surface upon his features, thawing that bitter coldness and revealing a face that was young and guileless. In brief, he was a beauty. At this point, there was no way to hide Morsi's attractiveness. Goo Mahng could only hope that Wu Yan had peculiar tastes or that she was blind. He began to pray. Don't choose Princess. Don't choose Princess. Princess has an explosive temper. You can't handle the consequences. He was still chanting devoutly when Wu Yan lifted a finger and pointed it right at Morsi. It'll be you. Goo Mahng stared in horror. Morsi blinked in confusion. Wu Yan stretched languidly and rose from the blood pool. The Firebat tribe had a unique constitution. Instead of staining her body red, the blood rolled off her like normal hot spring water to reveal her naked body, supple as white jade. The demon's lack of propriety made Goo Mahng want to bash his own head in. Wu Yan stepped straight out of the bath. Goo Mahng only saw her bare back, but where Morsi stood, he would be seeing her front. Goo Mahng risked a peek at Morsi's face. A series of vivid colors passed over it like a rotating carousel lantern, but the Firebat tribe wasn't sharp and had difficulty reading expressions. And the incense fumes had dulled Wu Yan's focus and self-restraint. She only saw Morsi's handsomeness and none of his menace. The Bat Queen spread her arms provocatively, then gathered her hair and clicked her tongue. What a hopeless little servant you are. I've selected you to attend me. Did you freeze up in joy? Come, help this venerable one dress. After such an invitation, what more did Morsi need to hear? His eyes flew wide as he first stared at Wu Yan in shock, then swung his gaze over to Goo Mahng, who guiltily lowered his head. Morsi seemed to choke on his words. He slowly looked back at Wu Yan, his handsome face going a stunning shade of green. Chapter 100. Poor Xi-Mei. The honeypot scheme was a time-tested ploy recorded in the 36 Stratagems. Footnote number 2, the 36 Stratagems is a 6th century treatise outlining a series of stratagems used in war, politics, and civilian life. Returning to the reading. A beauty sent into an enemy's sumptuous tent could become the poison that brought them down. But not every beauty was suited for this kind of work. For instance, you might send out the famed seductress Diao Chen to coordinate a plan of attack from within and without. But if you tried to do the same thing with the legendary female warrior like Mu Guiying... Footnote number 3. Diao Chen is a beautiful woman from Romance of the Three Kingdoms who seduced the warrior Liu Bu and convinced him to kill the warlord Dong Zhuo, while Mu Guiying, footnote number 4, is the legendary female warrior from the generals of the Yang family saga and a symbol of courage and loyalty. So really quickly, I'm just going to go ahead and reread that again. A beauty sent into an enemy's sumptuous tent could become the poison that brought them down, but not every beauty was suited for this kind of work. For instance, you might send out the famed seductress Diao Chen to coordinate a plan of attack from within and without. But if you tried to do the same with a legendary female warrior like Mu Guiying, Goo Mahng was intimately familiar with Morsi's temper. Morsi could weather injury or insult without batting an eye. But romantic liaisons between men and women were intolerable to him. When Morsi was young, he had watched his mother and uncle carry on a sordid affair, and as an adult, he compulsively avoided relationships. He couldn't abide women having improper thoughts about him. In all his 30 years, Goo Mahng alone had managed to mess around with him without getting killed. Upon seeing Morsi's hands clench into fists, teeth visibly grinding in his handsome jaw, 1,000 ideas flashed through Goo Mahng's mind. At last, he shouted with a bolt of inspiration, "Why is it you?" All the bat demons, Morsi included, turned to stare at him. Wu Yan narrowed her eyes. You two know each other? Goo Mahng knelt, faking flustered concern. Your Majesty, please forgive my rudeness. This venerable one asked you a question. The two of you know each other? Wu Yan glanced at Goo Mahng, then at Morsi. He's your lover? The Firebat tribe were demons that sprang from the union of beasts and depraved members of the feathered tribe. Naturally, they had no taboo against taking others' husbands or wives. If Goo Mahng lied and said Morsi was his lover, this Bat Queen might find the prospect more thrilling and be less likely to let him go. So he quickly put on a hateful expression as he looked up to answer Wu Yan. How can I be his lover? I'm not even done loathing him. Your Majesty, forgive me. I was overcome with revulsion, which is why I offended your Majesty. Wu Yan's curiosity was piqued. She blinked her bright brown eyes. How did he provoke you? Goo Mahng rose and pointed an accusing finger at Morsi. Without blinking or stammering, he announced, he can't get it up. Oh my gosh. Both Morsi and Wu Yan were completely taken aback. A hush fell over the pavilion. The female demons all eyed Morsi, whispering among themselves. A few of the younger ones couldn't hold themselves back and tittered loudly behind their sleeves. Meanwhile, some of the male demons who had entered with Morsi looked at him with undisguised sympathy. How do you know? Goo Mahng ignored Morsi's stare, which seemed ready to slice him to ribbons, and blurted, Your Majesty, I dual cultivated with him before, but he was unreliable and damaged my vital energy. How could I let this go? The gazes on Morsi became judgmental. It was one thing if he simply wasn't up to the task, but how bad did his technique have to be for him to enter the demon dual cultivating with him? Even Wu Yan had her doubts now. She had planned to use the blood pool bath and Xuan Yu's dual cultivation technique to repair her vital energy because she couldn't take a Xueling pill. If she was led astray by beauty and chose an unreliable guard to serve her, the results would be the opposite of what she wanted. She turned at once to rage at Afang. This is the man you picked? Terrified, Afang blenched and dropped to her knees. She kowtowed in apology, then spoke sternly to Morsi. What are you still doing here? You want to anger Her Majesty further? Get the hell out! Morsi was so furious he was shaking from head to toe, yet he had nowhere to vent his anger. In the end, he shot a last vicious glare at this crowd of lunatics, then glowered at that lying ruffian before turning to leave. Wu Yan announced to the remaining male demons, This venerable one is weak today. If any of you are unreliable, get lost. If you remain here and this venerable one picks you and you hurt my vital energy, I promise you can't bear the consequences. The Firebat tribe was licentious by nature. Those male demons were all too eager. Upon seeing their queen's naked, supple body and breathing in all that incense, their faces flushed and their eyes shone. They clamored to offer their services. I can do it. Your Majesty, I can. Your Majesty, I'm great in bed. Goo Mahng looked on incredulously. Thank goodness these demons were slow-witted. If this were the cleverer Qingqiu fox tribe, the mishap would not have been settled so easily. It seemed Goo Mahng had gotten into the queen's head. In the end, she picked a tall, strapping demon with thick hair and retired to her rooms with him. Afang closed the door for them and turned to the other demons at the agate pool. All right, that's it for tonight. You're dismissed. Go cultivate and gather energy for Her Majesty. Yes, the demons chorused. Goo Mahng saw that some of the female demons looked anxious. They rushed over to the male demons the queen hadn't selected, fighting among themselves to speak with them first. Goo Mahng's suspicions were roused. Why were they in such a rush? What did go cultivate and gather energy for Her Majesty mean? As he muttered to himself in contemplation, he tidied up the fruit plate in a corner and slipped out of the pavilion before he could be noticed. Unexpectedly, his questions were answered the moment he left the inner courtyard. Just outside, those female bat demons and male guards had already paired off, embracing passionately. Even the wrinkled and pudgy female demon who had struck him with the whip was looking for a male demon to join her. Those who found partners to consort with disappeared into a number of simple thatched huts on either side of the pavilion. Soft thumps and gasps already rose from several huts with their curtains pulled down. As Goo Mahng watched, wisps of white smoke floated up from the huts where the demons were copulating and wound together the inner courtyard of the pavilion, finally converging above the queen's abode. So, Not only would Wu Yan restore her energies from cultivating the yin and yang path, she could also harvest the spiritual energy created from dual cultivation between her tribe members. Even Goo Mahng, shameless as he was, had to blush at this. Still, he had to marvel. This fire bat tribe was born of the feathered tribe's beastly dalliances, yet they could use sex to increase and mend their energy. The living thing of the 9 provinces were wondrous indeed. Without warning, a heavy hand came down on his shoulder. Goo Mahng was already on edge in this erotic atmosphere, terrified that some hapless male demon would try their luck with him. At this unexpected touch from behind, he jerked his head around. But before he could get a clear look at the newcomer's face, Goo Mahng had already been pinned from behind as his assailant's other hand came up to cover his mouth. The demon said not a word as he dragged Goo Mahng toward the nearest thatched hut. Goo Mahng panicked. This bat demon was shockingly strong, but using magic would instantly give Goo Mahng away. All he could do was squirm. His strength was no match for his assailant's. Not only was Goo Mahng unable to struggle free of his grasp, the demon had covered Goo Mahng's mouth so tightly he couldn't make a sound. He shoved Goo Mahng into the hut and tossed him roughly into a pile of straw. The bamboo curtain tumbled down, blocking the moonlight and plunging the small hut into darkness. Sunk in that soft heap of straw, Goo Mahng's scalp prickled. The firebat tribe descended, however, crookedly, from the feather tribe, and the feather tribe were birds. The most primitive area of their territory, the places where they mated, for example, followed the instinctive habits of demon birds. Thus, their sex hut contained no bed, but a nest-like pile of straw. The pungent scent of it assaulted Goo Mahng's nostrils, along with a primitive beastly musk, so intense he almost choked. To fight or not to fight? Do nothing, and this male bat demon would take him by force in the dark. Fight back, and not only would he fail in his mission to crack the barrier around the island, he might also put Yue Chengqing and the others in danger. His mind buzzed with worry. As that tall figure stalked toward him, Goo Mahng shrieked miserably, Daka, if you have something to say, let's talk. I'm just a fledgling. I'm not suited for yin and yang dual cultivation. Consider someone else. The demon ignored his rambling. He hauled Goo Mahng around and pressed him into the straw pile. Motherfucker, Goo Mahng shouted. You still won't stop? You fucking get off to this, huh? Keep shouting. His assailant spoke at last. His voice, low and electrifying, made Goo Mahng shudder against his will. That cornered, furious, strained, frustrated voice spoke right in his ear, rising and falling with its owner's damp, scalding breaths. And I really will fuck you to death. Goo Mahng blinked. I fucking had enough. Don't think I won't do it. After what seemed like an age, the large hand around Goo Mahng's throat finally let go. As the other demon stood up, a fireball ignited in his palm, illuminating the small straw hut. Moshi was biting his lip in the orange firelight, staring daggers at Goo Mahng as he lifted that handful of flames. Those pretty phoenix eyes contained fury, yet were also tinged a delicate red. In a departure from his usual fastidious propriety, the collars of his robes were in disarray from Goo Mahng's struggles beneath him. Goo Mahng rubbed at the 5 livid finger marks on his throat and gasped for air. He rolled his eyes. Are you crazy? All I said was that you couldn't get it up. Moshi clenched his teeth. You couldn't keep your mouth shut? Was I supposed to stay quiet and wait for you to start a fight then? Goo Mahng nearly retched, heaving for breath. His blue eyes were misty as he looked up at Moshi. Huh, looks like I should have said, yeah, this guy's totally hung. 7 rounds a night is no problem. He'll satisfy you so completely you'll wish the night was longer and let the queen yank you like a concubine into her bedroom to disgrace you 100 times over. You what? Goo Mahng plunked himself down on the pile of straw and took a great lungful of air. You scared the shit out of me just then. I really thought you were some bat demon in heat, he mumbled. When he finally recovered his composure, he pulled himself upright and looked up at Moshi. Let's talk business. How's your Chengqing? Moshi tamped down on his anger. No change to the crystal, he replied. Goo Mahng rubbed his neck again and coughed a few more times. That's good. Oh yeah, put out that flame. This bamboo curtain doesn't block light. The bat demons don't like fire. If they see it, they'll know something's wrong with this hut. I set down the light concealment barrier. It's better to be cautious. After a pause, Xi snapped his fingers. The fire winked out. Goo Mahng sat and breathed steadily. We're almost finished here. Try to be patient, he said. As soon as I pull out the soul recording spell I left on Wu Yan, we'll know where we can leave the island. With that, Goo Mahng began to mouth the incantation. Motes of white light streamed slowly from the pavilion, passing through the walls of the hut and converging at Goo Mangh's fingertips. Over the space of an instant's time, a pearlescent ball of light coalesced in Goo Mangh's palm. Look, this is Wu Yan's mind. Goo Mahng sighed in relief. I recorded the secrets of the barrier and also asked it to find the reason she wants to make people into puppets. Seeing as Yue Chengqing fell victim to her goo, I thought it best to know. He filled Xi in on everything he'd heard by the agate pool. Xi frowned. Wu Yan was betrayed by an immortal? Sounds like it, Goo Mahng replied. There's a good chance we'll catch a glimpse of that heartless and disloyal immortal in this portion of her mind. Hold on a moment. Xi didn't have much interest in any heartless and disloyal immortal, but upon seeing Goo Mangh's earnest expression, he opted to stay quiet. Goo Mahng twitched his fingertips, and the glowing ball rose into the air, floating at eye level. Tell me, Goo Mahng said, why do you infect the men that come to the island with goo? The pearly white ball gradually filled with color as a hazy scene took shape on its surface. The indistinct murmurs of someone's innermost thoughts surrounded them. It was Wu Yan's voice. This happened back when I was young, she said softly. At these words, the scene and the glowing ball began to change. Chapter 101. So Gullible. Many years ago, the Dream Butterfly Islands were at war. The demon population on a neighboring island outgrew their lands, and their people had nowhere to go. To expand their territory, they broke our alliance and invaded the islands belonging to the Firebat tribe. After many months of fighting, the invading demons killed the queen, my mother, and massacred the other bat tribes on the island. A crowd of demons slaughtering their fellows appeared in the ball of light. Its pearly gleam darkened, veiled with a bloody haze. I was the heir to the bat throne. Those demons saw me as a thorn in their side and sought to kill me. My elder sister used herself as bait to help me escape, but I was severely wounded. My wings were broken, my tendons snapped, yet I drained my spiritual energy to flee. I was too scared to stop, but I didn't know where to go. Furious waves crashed within the ball of light, thunder and lightning interweaving. I flew over the sea in bat form for many, many days, when I met a great storm. My strength was flagging and my wounds were festering. Finally, I could fly no more. I tumbled from the sky onto an unfamiliar island. The moment I fell, I knew I hadn't landed in any ordinary place. Its spiritual energy was too strong. This was the home of immortals. In the vision, the young Wu Yan flapped her ragged wings, attempting to take flight again and again to no avail. I was terrified, she said. Ever since I was little, I was told immortals love to kill demons. I lay in the grass, thinking how I'd survived the battle between demon tribes only to die at the hands of an immortal. I wanted to struggle to my feet and fly from the island, but I didn't have the strength. No matter how I tried, my wings could no longer carry me. But my flailing attracted the attention of a passerby. Someone was walking through the flowers, walking toward me. And this person probably spared her. Anyway, let's continue reading. The bat with broken wings collapsed into the grass, near death. She was gravely injured. Her thin wing membranes were torn, and blood stained the leaves beneath her. Her bat eyes were wet and wide, the picture of misery. As she lay helpless, a white-soled silk shoe with blue trim appeared in the glowing ball and stopped next to her. An elegant, fine-boned hand reached down and gathered her up. That person carefully protected her, supporting her in his palm. Goo Mahng was smug. Look, didn't I say the heartless and disloyal immortal would appear? The field of vision in the ball of light slowly moved upward, from that white silk shoe to those spotless sleeves. Once the immortal's face came into view, Both Goo Mahng and Morsi were stunned. "The wise gentleman?" Goo Mahng exclaimed in surprise. Morsi's eyes widened. "Headmaster Chun." The heartless traitor looking out from the ball of light was none other than Chonghua's sage from centuries ago, Chun Tang, the wise gentleman. It beggared belief. As far as they knew, Chun Tang's cultivation was remarkable and his character faultless. But he was still a normal human. He had never ascended to become an immortal. "How could this be?" Goo Mahng mumbled. Morsi stared at that glimmering ball of light with a frown. He shook his head. "Let's keep watching." In the vision, Chun Tang stroked his porcelain-pale fingers across Wu Yan's fuzzy forehead. His soothing touch passed jade-color spiritual energy to this little demon hanging on to life by a thread. The scene in the glowing ball slowly widened to show an isolated, near-uninhabited isle. But it wasn't Bat Island. The island in the vision was undeniably strange. Its climate was difficult to discern, for it was filled with flowers and trees laden with ripe fruit. Winter's plum blossoms, summer's lotuses, autumn's osmanthus, and springtime's peaches and plums were all seen. The fertile land was awash in beautiful blossoms, and at the center of the island was an altar constructed from a single massive stone. The altar was empty, save for a jade qin table with a 5-stringed jiaowei guqin arranged on top. Footnote number 5, jiaowei, meaning scorched wood, first made by a notable scholar of the Eastern Han Dynasty who created a qin with a beautiful tone from a piece of burned wood of the parasol tree. Returning to the reading. Goo Mahng turned to Morsi. "There is still much I can't remember. Is this island part of Chonghua?" he asked. "No." Morsi stared at that flowering isle. "This island doesn't fall within Chonghua's territory." Goo Mahng stroked his chin. How curious. Chun Tang, the wise gentleman, appearing alone on a deserted island outside of Chonghua. He had no time for further thought before Wu Yan's voice sounded again, this time filled with endless disappointment, frustration, and longing. "Perhaps it wasn't my time to go. Or perhaps the tales I was told as a child were false. But after the immortal on this island found me wounded, he never tried to hurt me. He took me back to his living quarters and did all he could to heal me." In the ball of light, Chun Tang carried the injured bat to a wood cottage near the little island's shore. "I was badly wounded, and my dear mother and sister had perished in the terrible battle I'd fled," continued Wu Yan. "Intent on escape, I'd had no time to grieve. But now that I was safe, I was overcome with heartbreak and cried day and night." In the small room, Wu Yan, having recovered her human form, was huddled in a ball, tears streaming down her face. "The immortal kept me company. He wasn't scary like the ones in the demon tribe's tales. He treated me kindly, consoling and comforting me. Under his care, my spirits slowly lifted. I stayed for a long, long time. Later, I discovered the island moved from place to place. It never stayed in the same spot for long." Goo Mahng and Morsi exchanged glances. What kind of island was this? Covered in flowers and drifting untethered on the sea? It was like nothing they had heard of before. Regardless of season, the island existed in an eternal spring. An immortal lived there, so the spirits of the plants flourished, Wu Yan said. "But aside from the flowers and trees, we were the only two on the island. He was kind and good, but far too mysterious. He wouldn't tell me where he came from. He wouldn't even tell me his name. After living with him so long, all I knew was that his surname was Chun." "So it really was Chun Tang?" Goo Mahng murmured. "But what could I do? I called him Chun Guga." Within the glowing ball, Wu Yan had regained some of her spiritual energy and, with it, her human form. She sat by the verdant altar with her delicate legs bandaged, but she didn't seem to be in pain. Her bright eyes never strayed from Chun Tang's figure. Chun Guga came to the altar and played the qin every day. The music was beautiful. Each time he played, illusory haitang petals fell swirling over the island. I thought this was his immortal magic and begged him to teach me, but he always demurred. He said the haitang flowers didn't fall because of him. When I pressed him, he only smiled, but he was beautiful when he smiled. I saw him every day, and each time I saw him smile, I was happy. Our time passed like this, day after day. He treated my wounds, and I listened to him play the teen. And then one day, Wu Yan paused. I discovered my view of the world had changed. Before that, I had the sky, the flowers, the trees, and Chunguga in front of me. They were all very pretty, and it made me happy to look at them. But one day, I discovered that although the sky, the flowers, and the trees were still there, they no longer caught my eye. Instead, it was as if they had given all their color to Chunguga. Wu Yan said, I finally understood. I had fallen in love with him. He saved my life, treated my wounds, and soothed my grief. He shattered my previous impression of immortals. Wu Yan's inner voice sounded like any young girl's, pleasant and sweet, like crisp fruit on a branch. Though he was so mysterious and taciturn, though he was an immortal and I a demon, I loved him, and I was going to make him love me back. A brief silence. But he turned me away. A brief silence. The ball's pearlescent glow dimmed. Within it, Wu Yan was standing by the teen altar, face in her hands, tears falling between her fingers with a soft patter. It was clear her attempts to win over Chuntang had failed. When Wu Yan's inner voice spoke again, she sounded tearful. He was completely shocked when I confessed my feelings, she said. He said we had only known each other for a few months. How could I feel love for him? But love isn't just a feeling. It can be slow and steady like a stream, or something you grasp in an instant. No matter how I pleaded with him, he rejected me in no uncertain terms. He said I could stay on the roaming immortal island until my injuries healed, then I must leave. I told him that I really did love him, but he said he didn't share the same path. I told him I would cultivate the immortal path for him, but he said he wasn't an immortal. Wu Yan paused. Liar. If he wasn't an immortal, how could he move that island? If he wasn't an immortal, why would petals fall when he played the teen? I interrogated him, but he refused to answer. In the end, all I asked was whether or not he thought I was pretty. I would spare no effort to become whatever type of woman he liked, but he said his heart was for the doll and that he desired nothing else. At this, Goo Mahng sighed. The Firebat tribe wasn't sharp to begin with, and on top of that, the emotions of demons were more stubborn and unreasonable than those of humans. Chuntang obviously had no feelings for her, but she still hounded him for an explanation. She must have worn him down to the point of helplessness. Cultivators would often say their hearts were for the doll when they needed to reject a particularly persistent admirer. In most cases, as soon as they heard these words, there was nothing the rejected party could say, no matter how infatuated they were. At the very least, it was easy to accept since they weren't losing to a rival. And indeed, Wu Yan said as much. I wasn't satisfied with his reason, but what could I do? I couldn't possibly stop him from cultivating, could I? In the end, I had no choice but to leave the immortal island. But before I left, I decided to be stubborn one last time. I told him, since you're a gentleman, you must be a man of your word. You've rejected me today because your heart is for the doll, with no desire for anything else. So you can't lie to me. He said he wasn't lying. So I asked him to pinky promise with me. Another pinky promise. Sorry. I used the demonic spell from the Firebat tribe to tie an invisible thread on his pinky. If he ever went back on his word and married another woman in the future, I would find out. And then I would... Wu Yan sounded lost. Even she didn't seem to know what she would do if Chuntang married in the future. The scene in the glowing ball shifted again, this time showing the familiar coast of Bat Island. After I returned to Bat Island, I went through many trials and became the queen of the island. Yet I longed for him. Every night, I summoned the thread on my finger. When I saw it was still there, I would know he had kept his promise to love no one else. I clung to hope deep in my heart. I went against my nature to cultivate the immortal path, all in the hope that there would come a day I'd see him again. I hoped he would see my sincerity and know my feelings were true. I hoped I could change his thinking. So I kept cultivating and waiting, year after year, until one day, the voice paused, and the ball of light darkened. Within, Wu Yan was flying into a rage, as if she'd gone mad. One day, I found that thread had broken. Goo Mahng turned to Morsi in astonishment. Did Chuntang marry before he died? He asked Morsi. Morsi frowned, leveling a doubtful gaze at the ball. He shook his head. No, he had no wife or children. Then, did he have any similar-looking siblings? No. Strange, Goo Mahng said. According to Chonghua's annals, he died killing the demon beast, but that doesn't line up with Wu Yan's story at all. Goo Mahng's brow furrowed as he continued in a low murmur. I've always felt Chuntang seemed familiar somehow, like I've seen him somewhere before. What's up with this person? As he pondered, Wu Yan continued to speak. Like muffled thunder from an approaching storm, her voice slowly transformed from sorrowful to ominous. He married. He changed his mind, but not for me, she seethed. For some woman I didn't even know. So much for heart of the Tao, desiring nothing else. He lied to me. He looked down on me because I was a demon and he was an immortal. As soon as a suitable immortal pursued him, he changed his tune. He never intended to tell me the truth. I wished for nothing more than to rush over and rip that man-stealer to shreds. But I didn't even know what the bitch looked like. I was there first. Wu Yan's fury echoed in their ears, as piercing as bared claws. I knew him first. He promised me. He was disloyal and heartless. He broke his promise. Goo Mahng sighed to himself. He'd really expected it to be a typical story of a fickle man, but against all odds, it wasn't so. This firebat demon queen had staked it all on a one-sided infatuation. Chuntang never loved her in the first place, and rejected her the only way he could. She tried to force him to love her, but feelings could never be forced. Nor did it matter who had come first. It was true that Chuntang had promised he wouldn't marry, and had broken that promise, but this couldn't truly be deemed a betrayal. I left the island to look for him, but the world is vast, and I had no idea where he and that bitch were hiding. On top of that, I was cultivating the immortal path against my nature. For this, I paid a heavy price. I was still young, yet my hair had turned white, my body shriveled and sunken. Only the shrilling pill made with the blood of the feathered tribe would return me my youth and strength. But why? In the glowing ball, Wu Yan had become a wrinkled old woman, raging within the palace. A servant girl trembled as she presented a shrilling pill to Wu Yan on the throne. The instant she swallowed it, it was as though an unseen hand smoothed the wrinkles from her face, her aged skin becoming delicate and supple once more, and her withered features regained their beauty. Her youth could be returned with forbidden medicines. Only the innocence in her eyes was lost forever. Mother was right. Immortals really do kill demons. Some kill our bodies, while others kill our hearts. Liar! Liar! I don't understand these men who aren't of my tribe. I never want to see creatures like that again. By now, Wu Yan had descended into a frenzied madness. On the one hand, she believed Chuntang could still change his mind. She harbored the deranged hope that her lost love would come see her again. On the other, she developed an extreme hatred for men of any other tribe, demon or human. She issued an order. If foreign men came to the island, they would be fed goo worms to change their appearance into Chuntangs. She would use them however she pleased, easing her longing for a brief time. For a love like this, once is enough. I'll never make such a mistake again. Her soft voice faded like ripples on a lake's surface, slowly falling silent. Once her story ended, Goo Mahng stood and extinguished the ball of light. All that remained was a wisp of white that curled up and floated into his head, the result of him sharing minds with Wu Yan and mastering the Bat Island barrier. Silence reigned inside the thatched hut. Goo Mahng said nothing after completing the spell, and Morsi's head ached from the demon tribe's overzealous emotions. He kneaded the bridge of his nose and his forehead in frustration. The Firebat tribe was beast-like, and their love and hatred came down to something like this. If I love you, I'll make any sacrifice for you. If you don't love me after that, then you're heartless. The situation was a little more nuanced than that, but Goo Mahng still felt rather speechless. Morsi sat on the pile of straw, his head pounding. What is this? Watching him, Goo Mahng slowly formed a cunning idea. He broke the silence to ask with interest. What about you? Have you ever had similar thoughts? Xi lifted his head, confusion in his black eyes. What? As Goo Mahng looked into his limpid, uncomprehending eyes, he felt a twinge of reluctance. But he hardened his resolve, quirking his lips into that infuriatingly roguish smile as he reached out to lift Xi's defined jaw. Perhaps Wu Yan's rambling really had made Xi's head spin, or perhaps Goo Mangh's loaded question had stunned him. Whatever the reason, Xi didn't resist. He let Goo Mangh's fingers tilt his face up, staring blankly at the man in front of him. Goo Mahng smiled. Have you ever resented me like that? Xi continued to stare. Have you ever thought, no matter how much you sacrificed or how much you changed? Goo Mangh's fingers slid down inch by inch, past that chiseled chin, along the rolling jut of Xi's throat and down his lapels, slowly coming to a stop on the left side of Xi's chest. I never really loved you? My God. Goo Mangh's fingertips tapped against that spot where he had once personally stabbed Xi. A smile like fleeting mist played upon his lips as he pressed down lightly. The wound had long since healed, but the grisly scar remained. Through Xi's clothes, beneath Goo Mangh's fingers, it faintly began to throb once more. Arm propped on one knee, Goo Mahng knelt in the straw. He leaned down to stare at Xi, who was sitting in front of him, and his mouth split into a grin as he asked, General Mo, have you ever felt the kind of resentment she did? The confusion on Xi's face disappeared with this. Goo Mahng was smiling, but he might as well have slapped Xi across the face. Xi was stung. He hadn't expected this strike, and heartbreak spilled from his expression almost instantly. He turned away, biting his lip. Only after a long moment did he gather up his dignity and turn back to Goo Mahng, fixing him with a vicious glare. Chantang never said he loved Wu Yan. So? But you... Xi spoke with difficulty. You did. Oh, did I? Goo Mahng paused. Then let's say I did. But you should understand, what men say in bed in a moment of pleasure can't be taken seriously. Goo Mahng heaved a sigh. Back when I slept with those girls, I would also tell them, I love you, I care about you, you're the only one for me. When I was happy, I would say I'd plug the moon from the sky for them. But look at you. You're a grown man. These words wouldn't fool silly little brothel girls, yet you believed them. He sighed, reaching out as if to pat Xi on the head, but before he could complete the action, Xi slapped his hand away. Chapter 102. Sharing a Room. The smile on Goo Mangh's face froze. Something stirred faintly in the depths of his blue eyes, but only for the instant it took that apathetic smile to return. He looked down at Xi's handsome face, at this man who currently resembled nothing so much as a dog betrayed by its master or a cat whose tail had been trod on. Sorrow and wounded pride merged on that bone-white face. Tears gathered in Xi's eyes, but he still stubbornly held on, gritting his white teeth as he stared back at Goo Mahng with a fierce arrogance. So what if I did? I'm not like you. I can't be so careless toward everything. Goo Mahng paused, then burst into laughter. Look at you. And to think you look down on Wu Yan. Aren't you the same? You insisted on forcing it, and you insisted on believing it. The tendons on Xi's pale hands were pushing through the skin, but Goo Mahng acted like he hadn't noticed. There's really very little difference between you. Both of you think what you gave wasn't reciprocated and spent so many years stewing a resentment. But he didn't get to finish. Goo Mahng. Xi cut in, pinning him with a stare. Are you being serious right now? Why wouldn't I be? You think I resented and hated you all these years because what I gave wasn't reciprocated? Goo Mahng looked into the flickering depths of Xi's eyes and almost felt sorrow, but after a beat, all he said was, why else? Xi closed his eyes. If I hated you for that, why would I have bothered begging you to turn back at Dongting Lake? Why would I have bothered keeping your soldiers, or hoped you wouldn't go to the Liao Kingdom? If I were only upset because you never truly loved me, do you think you could still stand before me and say these things now? Long suppressed emotions ripped a hole in Morsi's facade of calmness. He finally erupted. If that were my grievance, I'd have plenty of opportunities to vent my discontent. I could have taken you by force, humiliated you, poisoned or drugged you. Yet I've done none of those things. Do you think it's because I don't know how? I saw you as my comrade, my friend, my beloved, my God. What I hate is your betrayal and the way you changed. You didn't just abandon me. You abandoned your brothers, your dream, your fathomless glory. You abandoned the man you used to be. Morsi's eyes were red-rimmed. Had you chosen any other path, I wouldn't have blamed you, even if you had nothing more to do with me for the rest of your life. Goo Mahng, back then, you nearly ripped out my heart. Goo Mahng's hands shook slightly. Morsi looked up at him, black eyes dull as a starless night. As he gave voice to the emotions trapped in his breast for too long, he rasped, "Couldn't you see?" For a while, Goo Mahng couldn't speak. Those dark eyes hurt too much to look at. Goo Mahng remembered the first time he encountered them, back when they looked nothing like this. The first time he saw Morsi, he was standing beneath one of the Academy's osmanthus trees, his gold-trimmed black robes embroidered with the soaring snake emblem. His high ponytail was bound with gold ribbon, and a jade bow rested in the crook of his arm as he sighted a distant target. The wind rose and set his sleeves to fluttering. Sensing someone's eyes on him, Morsi turned back and glanced at Goo Mahng. Those eyes were like deep, still waters, clear and bright as an ethereal lake. His gaze held little emotion. It casually slid away from Goo Mahng. After that, Goo Mahng encountered him again and again at the academy. He saw him sitting alone on the stone steps, reading a book, then eating alone, leaning against a tree. He saw him leaving the academy's cultivation practice field, walking with his ribbon in his mouth as he gathered his hair into a ponytail, his pale, slender neck emerging from sweat-soaked robes. He was always alone. That young Mo clan is so arrogant. Huh. Who cares how powerful his spiritual energy is? He still has no friends. You should hear the headmaster go on about him, how he's so talented and hard-working. I heard, ever since he entered the academy, he practices at the archery range every day until the hour of high, long after dark. Who does he think he's putting on a show for? Goo Mahng had heard the same sentiment many times by now. Long before Morsi knew Goo Mahng was well aware of the name Morsi. He was the subject of whispered discussions in the academy and his Lord Muzhonglian's mockery. Without intending to, Goo Mahng had inadvertently learned a great deal. Among noble young masters, bad tempers, arrogant natures, phony reputations, and reckless ambitions were only too common. Goo Mahng assumed Morsi had no one to blame but himself and didn't think too kindly of him either. So it went until the day Goo Mahng passed by the fields and saw two of the academy slaves kneeling before Morsi. The holy weapon Shuaizhan crackled in his grip. Goo Mahng saw a young master using his status to bully slaves and was about to speak up for them when he heard one of the slaves sniveling through tears as he kowtowed. Mo, we're sorry. We didn't steal your money pouch on purpose. It's just... The thin, sickly-looking girl beside him cried. It's just that we're starving. We offended Muzhong Gongzi a few days back, so the head housekeeper cut our rations. My brother was afraid that I might fall ill from hunger, and you're always alone. That's why he had the guts to try and steal your... Morsi stared at this pair of siblings. Slowly, the red light of the whip Shuaizhan dimmed to nothing in his hand. Head lowered, he took his money bag from his Chenkuan pouch and left it on the stone steps. Then he turned to leave. Watching this play out from a distance, Goo Mahng was stunned. Because of what Hua Po-an had done, the disciples of the Cultivation Academy were forbidden from interacting with any slaves not their own, and they most certainly weren't allowed to help them. That was the greatest taboo at the academy. But Morsi had acted instantly and silently, with no expectation of reciprocity, as if what he'd done was natural. Back then, Goo Mahng had felt something he couldn't put into words as he watched the little lord's fluttering silhouette recede. But he still wouldn't have paid any special attention to Morsi had things ended there. What truly surprised Goo Mahng was the news that spread like wildfire through the academy a few days later. The darling of the heavens Morsi had been whipped in punishment for violating academy rules. So even he can't escape punishment, huh? He thinks he's better than the rest of us. This whipping will finally knock him down a peg. I heard it's because he gave his money pouch to a pair of slave siblings. Everyone knows that's against the rules. Usually he's faking diligence, but I guess now he's faking kindness. What a hypocrite. Goo Mahng felt something entirely different in his heart as he listened to the crowd pass judgment on Morsi. When he returned to his room, he heard Mu Zhonglian's unbridled laughter from the courtyard. That Mo asshole is such an idiot. They were just faking it to trick him. I really didn't expect him to take the bait so easily. My lord is so wise and clever. Morsi doesn't stand a chance. No matter how strong his magic is, he won't be nominated for the Outstanding Student Award after breaking the Academy's greatest taboo. He thinks he's a match for me. Mu Zhonglian snickered. He's 10 years too early. Only then did Goo Mahng realize the case of the starving slave siblings had been completely orchestrated by Mu Zhonglian to frame his rival. After those siblings took Morsi's money pouch and cowrie shells, they turned around and brought them straight to Mu Zhonglian, who filed a complaint with the Academy's discipline elder. Morsi, he claimed, had openly defied the Academy's rules and secretly consorted with slaves. Morsi was the only son of the Mo clan. He would escape severe punishment, but he still had violated the Academy's greatest taboo. By no coincidence, the discipline elder was a friend of Wang Shujuan's family. Of course he favored Mu Zhonglian. Thus, Morsi was whipped. At the time, Goo Mahng had belonged to Mu Zhonglian. He and Morsi had no connection whatsoever. Yet this young master's actions had left him stunned. Slowly, he found himself caring for this Mo Gongzi whom he didn't know. He couldn't say anything to Morsi, much less visit him or make his sympathies known. But that incident planted a seed of affection in his heart. Destiny determined all, and those fated to meet never escaped its pull. A few days later, Goo Mahng was walking down one of the Academy's tree-lined paths. The jade-green lawn was deserted save for a youth sitting alone against a birch tree. Morsi sat in shady silence, nibbling on a zongzi and absorbed in a bamboo scroll spread over his knees. That pale cheek, like fresh snow, still bore a whip scar from his punishment. But he didn't seem to mind. Morsi's lowered lashes were still so thick, his gaze still so clear, free of resentment. A ripple spread through Goo Mangh's heart. He thought this young master was beautiful beyond compare. He stood behind a tree for a moment, gazing at that lonely, elegant figure from afar. At last, Morsi noticed this overly intent gaze and looked up from his scroll. Their eyes met. Goo Mahng stared in silence. Morsi stared back in confusion. This was the first time Goo Mahng met those ink-dark eyes. His palms were a little sweaty. He'd always been a cheerful person, but for some reason, he felt anxious. Part of him wanted to smile at Morsi, but another part of him didn't know what to do. At that time, Lu Zhenxing happened to pass by. Spotting Goo Mahng, he waved and shouted, "Mangar, what are you standing there for?" Goo Mahng turned to answer, breaking away from Morsi's gaze and striding off into the distance. The noble Mo Gongzi surely hadn't recognized this nameless little nobody. He probably didn't remember their first meeting on that tree-lined path. But Goo Mahng remembered. Those eyes were black jade. In his mind's eye, they were pristine, containing a purity he wanted to protect with all his heart. In the present, Goo Mahng sighed, looking into those eyes so close to him in the thatched hut. They held hate, resentment, pain, dissatisfaction, stubbornness, and ruthlessness flashed in their depths. But Goo Mahng remembered, the first time he saw Morsi, all they held was a solemn integrity. In the end, this was what they had become. Goo Mahng turned away. He was afraid if he kept looking, he wouldn't be able to stop himself from saying certain things. The heart where his core had shattered was already aching. In the silence of the hut, Morsi murmured, "Goo Mahng, Wouldn't it be nice if all I wanted was to have you? Things would have been so much simpler if that were the case. Goo Mahng didn't answer him. But what I wanted was for you to come back. There was nothing Goo Mahng could say. He sat down on the pile of straw, sinking softly into its depths. With a long sigh, he leaned back, staring blankly at the ceiling. He knew he needed to maintain boundaries with Morsi. Morsi was his poison, one that was deadly without an antidote. He strove to build a wall between himself and Morsi, but the moment he saw those frustrated, sorrowful, heartbroken eyes, his hands would shake as he tried to lay down the bricks. He very, very much wanted to leave this small thatched hut. Other than the straw, all he could smell was Morsi's faint scent. He wore a cold and hard mask, but he didn't know how long he could keep it on in front of Morsi. In the end, Goo Mahng sprang to his feet. He dusted the straw from his clothes, walked to the doorway, and peeked out through a crack in the curtain. The bat demons outside were still looking for partners. It was a chaotic scene. Definitely a poor time to leave. He could do nothing but sit back down next to Morsi and stare into space with his chin in his hand. He didn't plan to keep hurting Morsi. That would only hurt him too. But they couldn't just sit here like this either. Goo Mahng changed the subject. Where's your Ching's life crystal? In my Qian Kun pouch. Take it out. Let's have a look. After a moment, Morsi fished out the stone, inlaid with swirls of agate. It shone brightly, its gleam growing more resplendent as they watched. Goo Mahng took it in his own palm and examined it a while, then returned it to Morsi. Looks like everything is going smoothly on Jiangsheng's side. There's no rush to leave then. Let's wait until those bat demons are in their huts. It's too busy outside. Morsi ignored him. After his outburst, he had sunk into this wordless silence. Goo Mahng knew he must have truly hurt him. Of course Goo Mahng knew what he'd said was absurd. How could Morsi be the same as Wu Yan? They really had come together so passionately, so desperately. He had slept with Morsi enthusiastically, yet now he was criticizing Morsi for making a big deal of it. He had so clearly seen Morsi's attempts to protect him, Morsi's despair, Morsi's willingness to sacrifice his life to make him turn back. Yet in their current circumstances, what could he do but make Morsi hate him, make him leave him? Morsi's heart was soft. He was a man of upright character, and while he might have looked ruthless and cold, Goo Mahng knew he was kinder than anyone. This kindness was like the aid he offered those academy slaves. It too easily became a weapon others used against him. Since Goo Mahng had already chosen this path, he didn't need Morsi's pity, indignance, or dissatisfaction, and he especially didn't need the slightest hints of love. He only needed Morsi to hate him completely. But when he was so close to him, breathing in his familiar scent, Goo Mahng felt the same disquiet he had in the past. He knew distinctly what he had to do, yet he couldn't stop himself from clinging to one pitiful scrap of delusion, that everything could still be changed, that he could still get as close to him as before, like a moth flying into flame. A delusion that he could still hold this man, lose himself in him, that they could use the excuse of momentary passion to say, "I love you," one last time without hesitation. How nice that would be indeed. They sat on the straw, each lost in their own thoughts as they waited for the bat demons to find their mates and disperse. Suddenly, a pair of embracing bat demons staggered past the hut, breaking the silence. Through the hanging bamboo curtain, Morsi and Goo Mahng could see them kissing as if they were glued together and hear their flirtatious giggling. "Stop rushing me, won't you? We're gathering vital energy for Her Majesty. Aren't we in a rush?" The female demon's laughter was muffled by more kisses. "You're just using Her Majesty as an excuse. Don't you want to?" The following words were drowned out by heavy panting. Goo Mahng couldn't resist shooting a glance at Morsi, who noticed and turned his face aside. Just as Goo Mahng thought Morsi would continue feigning deafness, Morsi asked without preamble, "What does gathering vital energy for Her Majesty mean?" "Oh," Goo Mahng replied, "I think Wu Yan can absorb the spiritual energy produced by the bat demons when they copulate. It's probably a unique trait of the fire bat tribe." Morsi didn't make a sound. But from what Goo Mahng could see of his side profile, it looked like he was mouthing, ridiculous. Firebats are promiscuous by nature. It's not so strange, Goo Mahng said. Once they've entered their nests, we'll leave. That pair of lovebird bats were still kissing hungrily outside the curtain, their passion palpable even from their silhouettes. But when they tried to push the curtain aside to enter, the male bat stopped. Hiya, this one's taken. The female bat's voice was soft as flowing silk. The one next door is empty. Let's go there. The two bats stumbled into the hut next door. Just as Morsi breathed a sigh of relief, they heard a thump through the wall beside them. The two bats were pressed against the wall of their hut, just a few feet away. Now, the sound of their coupling echoed even louder in Goo Mahng and Morsi's ears. Not so fast. Slow down. Morsi's face instantly darkened. Oh, God. Chapter 103. Suffering. The huts were small, with little distance between each one and its neighboring abode. On top of that, the bat demons were a shameless bunch. Soundproofing was the furthest thing from their minds while building these huts. Some probably felt it was more thrilling this way. But Goo Mahng and Morsi were mortified. The two bat demons were in quite a hurry and wasted no time getting down to business. They had to be pressed up right against the wall. Goo Mahng and Morsi could hear faint wet squelches. Goo Mahng peeked over at Morsi. He couldn't see Morsi's expression in the dark, but the man was radiating an almost physical gloominess. Goo Mahng cleared his throat, turned his clear blue eyes toward the hut's ceiling, and began to hum. Morsi stared at him like he was a madman. He was looking for a way to distract himself from the uncomfortable noises of the demon beasts next door, which he quickly managed to do. In the past, Goo Mahng had played songs for all sorts of occasions on his suona. The melody he hummed now was every bit as brassy as the one he used to favor, with many twists and turns. While those two bats were immersed in each other on the other side of the wall, Goo Mahng was humming a little tune in an impossibly infuriating style. He'd originally just meant to mask those intrusive sounds, but all these melodies were songs from Chonghua that he'd forgotten when he lost his memories. He'd played some of them at Jiang Yeshue's wedding, others he played in trenches choked with the smoke of war. Back when he made these notes sing on his suona, there had been many people by his side. Lu Zhanxing hollering, Jiang Yeshue smiling. Those army ruffians sprawled out beneath the splendid spangled sky, raising cups of wine to their lips as they laughed and watched him by the dancing light of the bonfire. Morsi, too, would be among the crowd, gazing at him with those night dark eyes that shone so bright. As Goo Mahng hummed, he stopped caring about the noises from next door. He shifted into a more comfortable position, lying back in the pile of straw with his arms pillowed behind his head, bouncing one leg as he focused on the melody. After a time, he paused. He turned to Morsi, who was sitting in the darkness, and asked teasingly, "Do you like it?" "You want to bring the neighbors over?" Morsi replied darkly. Sorry. I won't. Goo Mahng leaned back against the straw, one hand tapping his knee, softly keeping time. "Watch. They can't stop me." A few minutes later, the sounds of the other side of the wall were replaced by angry pounding. Morsi looked at him reproachfully. His eyes seemed to say, "What are you going to do about this?" Goo Mahng was in no rush. He tied off his tune with a grace note and let the sound fade. "What's wrong, dear neighbors?" he asked lazily. "What are you doing in there? Are you screwing or not?" The male bat demon growled from the other side. Hearing him say screwing so obscenely, Morsi seemed to choke. But Goo Mahng was a vulgar person, so he laughed. "Oh, we're screwing all right." Morsi stared in silence. "Then what are you singing for?" "That's just how I am. When I'm enjoying myself, I like to hum a tune." The rage of the bat demon next door could have burned through both walls. "When you get done good, you like to hum Moon Reflected in the Pool?" he snarled. Footnote number 6, Moon reflected in the pool is a formal, mournful, traditional song. Yep. When I come, I even double the tempo. This response silenced the bat demon along with Xi. Bouncing a slender leg, Goo Mahng toyed with a piece of straw as he continued, unabashed. It's just a personal quirk. We were here first. If you don't like it, pick a room farther away. He paused, then added ruggishly. The demon I'm with is a great lay. Once I really get into it, who knows? I might find myself singing a jig or two. Brother, are you sure you don't want to move? The bat demons next door muttered curses at him. Despite their eagerness, it seemed they couldn't maintain the mood under threat of such a performance. The fire bat tribe was hedonistic and single-minded. In the heat of the moment, the last thing they wanted to deal with was a lunatic who sang double time when he came. After kicking the wall and swearing a few more times, the other couple left to find another hut. Listening to their shouts of lunatic and freak as they hurried away, Goo Mahng cackled silently in the pile of straw. As soon as they were gone for good, he couldn't hold back his laughter any longer. His shoulders shook, mirth coursing through him like ripples through water. You, Xi said. Arguing or explaining really won't do you any good sometimes. Goo Mahng looked at Xi with gleaming blue eyes, misty with suppressed laughter. He grinned. You've got to either ignore them or prove you're crazier than they are. Works every time. But Shizun, I'm afraid you couldn't learn this trick. You're far too prim and proper. Xi said nothing. Several minutes passed, and Goo Mahng felt they'd waited long enough. He pushed himself up from the pile of straw and took a step toward the door. Perhaps he'd gotten up too quickly after being sprawled out on his back for so long. He immediately felt lightheaded. Even while angry with him, Xi's question was reflexive. What's wrong? I don't know. I'm a little dizzy. Goo Mahng rubbed his forehead. I'll be all right in a bit. He crossed to the doorway, twitched the bamboo curtain aside with a pinky, and peered out. There were only a few bat demons in sight. Most had already paired off and disappeared into the thatched huts flanking the path. The pavilion made of human bones was deserted, but for the faint haze of incense smoke glowing slightly in the light of the moon. Goo Mahng waved Xi over. All right, we can sneak out now. Xi came to stand beside him. The two watched through the crack as the last pair of bat demons ducked into a hut. Goo Mahng reached out to lift the curtain. The instant he touched it, a red bat insignia glowed to life on the surface. So suddenly, it burned Goo Mahng's fingers. He snatched his hand back. What the hell? He exclaimed. Xi reached out as well and received a similar scorching. There's a barrier on the door, he murmured. Barrier techniques had never been Goo Mahng's strong suit, but they happened to be Xi's. Slender, pale fingers moved over the barrier sigil inch by inch, reading the spiritual energy flow. His brows drew together in a frown. It's a one-way barrier. Anyone can enter from outside, but to leave from inside... Xi hummed quizzically, as though he thought he might have read it wrong. He ran his fingers over the edge of the bat sigil a few more times. Whatever suspicions he held seemed to be confirmed. Xi's expression turned ugly as he lowered his head in silence. What is it? Goo Mahng asked. Xi said nothing. He walked back to the straw heap, sat down, and closed his eyes. We'll wait until daybreak to leave. Goo Mahng's eyes flew wide in surprise. Why? Don't ask questions. In the glow of the barrier's red light, Goo Mahng could see Xi wore an expression of embarrassment. Just as Goo Mahng was about to say more, another wave of dizziness washed over him. He had no choice but to stand quietly and wait for it to pass before walking over to Goo Mahng and sitting down. Goo Mahng was clever. If Xi wasn't willing to explain, he could guess. This barrier doesn't stop people from entering, but it stops them from leaving. Then its purpose must be to ensure those who enter complete the task before they leave. All the thatched huts must have the same barrier as this one. We can't get out. But those two bat demons from before could. Xi didn't reply. As Goo Mahng thought it over, his gaze roving back and forth inside the room, it gradually dawned on him. There was nothing here except a pile of soft, thick straw. The bat demons entered to do one thing: dual cultivate and send the spiritual energy they created into the queen's pavilion. He glanced at Morsi's shuddered expression once more. The answer was plain. I get it. The barrier would check to see if the people inside have had sex or not. It won't let out the ones who haven't, right? Morsi neither confirmed nor denied. As soon as the sun comes up, the barrier will lose its effect. We can go at dawn. But this dawn wouldn't come so easily. Goo Mahng tossed and turned, uncomfortable and unable to find sleep. The dizziness from earlier hadn't receded. If anything, it had intensified. He felt as though a fire had sparked to life in his belly, the dry heat spreading like ink on paper, rendering his breaths harsh and labored. At first, Goo Mahng thought he'd overtaxed his weakened body, so he put his discomfort out of his mind. But as it worsened, the strange heat made him prickle all over. Even his fingertips were trembling. By now, Goo Mahng couldn't possibly fail to realize what was going on. He sat bolt upright, panting lowly, and yanked open his lapels. He stared at the moon outside the bamboo curtain, his eyes flashing as he recalled what he'd seen in the pavilion. Bad news, he said. There's a problem with that fragrance from the blood pool. He swiped a hand over his face and patted his cheeks, trying to make himself more alert. Morsi? Morsi was sitting with his back against a straw heap. He hadn't slept. At the sound of Goo Mahng's voice, he turned. Do you feel weird at all? Goo Mahng asked. No. What's the problem? Goo Mahng swallowed. Those fire bats hadn't gone running into the huts just because of the queen's command. The fragrance released from the blood pool contained an aphrodisiac. But why wasn't it affecting Morsi? Was it because he hadn't gone to the pool and only breathed in a small amount of the scent in the air? Noting his silence, Morsi asked, Is something the matter? Goo Mahng paused. No. He lay back down on the straw, his back to Morsi, and began silently reciting sutras, trying to suppress the agitation that was growing stronger and stronger. But whatever fragrance the Bat Queen had poured into the blood pool was extremely potent, the equivalent of casting a spell on all the inhabitants of the pavilion to send them into heat. Unbeknownst to Goo Mahng, this perfume only affected demons. Morsi was a human. Of course he wouldn't feel anything. But Goo Mahng was different. His body had been tempered in the Liao Kingdom, fused with the essence of a snow fey wolf's soul. Even if the fragrance didn't have as strong an effect on him as on pure demons, it was still frightfully powerful. After reciting a heart-calming sutra 7 times over, he couldn't alleviate the dry heat burning through his body. Goo Mahng grimaced and curled in on himself as he faced the wall, his breaths slowly quickening. What the hell? Demon beasts were different from humans. Under normal conditions, humans could overcome their lust. It was uncomfortable, certainly, to be left without relief in the thick of desire, but it was no more than discomfort. Beasts and demons were not the same. When animals in heat couldn't find relief, their lustful torment was agonizing. Even their bones ached with it. Goo Mahng swallowed thickly and closed his eyes. He didn't want Morsi to discover the state he was in, but he couldn't control the effects of the incense, which seemed to take hold of his body as if in retaliation for his abstention. Because he hadn't obeyed the fragrance's commands, every sense that triggered lust was amplified. He could smell that scent he knew too well on Morsi's body, his faint, distinct fragrance, and the masculine musk beneath. Goo Mahng's hands balled into fists in the straw. He bit his lip and slowed his breathing by sheer will, but he couldn't suppress the pounding of his heart. Right now, he truly hated this body the Liao Kingdom had tempered, this body that ran with beastly blood, that forced him to submit to the aphrodisiac and recall those absurd, passionate scenes of the past. Goo Mahng's lashes fluttered, hiding the wetness in his eyes. I can't think about it. I won't think about it. Shattered images flashed before him, defying all reason. The lust in him longed for Morsi's sin to envelop him, yearned for Morsi to embrace him from behind as he did in the past, pressing his searing chest to Goo Mahng's spine. It demanded that they make love just as wildly as they had back then, that thick root pushing into yielding spring mud, the air filling with the earthy scent of petrichor. The soil was soft and saturated, and when that great cedar dove in, rivulets of spring water burst from its depths, pooling on the forest floor. I can't think about it. Won't think about it. But somehow, what sprang to mind was the scalding heat of Morsi's breath when he bit Goo Manh's earlobe, his ragged panting in the heat of desire. Goo Mahng. A questioning voice, its timbre low and alluring, broke through those torrid memories. Curled up with his back to Morsi, Goo Mahng shuddered against his will. Trying as he might to hide it, Morsi still noticed something amiss. What's wrong? The instant Goo Mahng opened his mouth, his voice was so hoarse even he was taken aback. He swallowed, forcing his voice to steadiness, hoping he sounded a little more distant and a little less shaky. I'm thinking about some personal matters. It's none of your business. These words were frosty, and Morsi was prideful. As Goo Mahng expected, he dropped the issue after being jabbed like that. Goo Mahng breathed a soft sigh of relief as he lay facing the wall of the hut, worrying his lip between his teeth. When he opened his eyes, they glimmered with scattered light. He was in such pain they had already filled with tears. The desire induced by the fragrance was insidious. The harder he tried to suppress it, the stronger it became. Goo Manh's senses screamed. They couldn't endure any more stimulation. He had merely heard Morsi's voice, and he could feel his body going weak. In the secret recesses of his heart, he found himself thinking how that voice had once murmured his name against the back of his ear while its owner held him from behind, thrusting into him as the sweat between their bodies threatened to fuse them together. Gradually, Goo Manh's vision blurred. It was too hot. It was genuinely too hot. His heart was beating so rapidly. He wished the time mirror hadn't given him his memories back. Wouldn't he be better off if he was still the version of himself who knew nothing of passion? Then he wouldn't remember any of these absurdities from the past, nor the thrill of pleasure or sharing Morsi's bed. Goo Mahng squeezed his eyes shut. He was on the verge of falling apart. The snow Fey-wolf blood was welcoming the poison inside his body without hesitation, burning away his human rationality piece by piece. The man he loved, the man he'd slept with, his only beloved, the man he was doomed to part with, the one he wanted but could never have. That man was right behind him, only a few steps away. And they were in a nest beasts use for rutting, filling with the heady scent of sex. The hand Goo Mahng clenched beneath the straw was trembling, his tendons protruding. He was afraid that, in the next second, Wu Yan's maddening miasma would destroy him, and he would do something reckless, something regrettable. After a moment of hesitation, his blue eyes snapped open. He reached down as if he'd made up his mind. With his back to Morsi, Goo Mahng unfastened his belt and took hold of himself with a shaking hand. He swallowed the groan that threatened to escape. Goo Manh's clear blue eyes were wide as he panted in silence. It had been a very long time since he'd done anything like this. He had to avoid Morsi's notice, so he moved surreptitiously. His hand stroked clumsily up and down, but it was like giving a parched traveler a single sip of water. Wetting his lips begat an even greater heat and thirst. He couldn't speed up or tighten his grip. He couldn't make any conspicuous sounds. It was like drinking poison to slake his thirst. Slowly, the rims of Goo Manh's eyes grew red from discomfort and frustration. The Fey-wolf blood rushing through his veins was about to drive him mad, but he couldn't even moan aloud. Even with his last scrap of rationality, he remembered he shouldn't get involved with Morsi. On the day he chose to defect, he had pushed Morsi to the side, then dug a chasm seething with hatred between them. He shouldn't have gotten close to him again. A strong hand grabbed him from behind. Goo Mahng flinched violently. He heard Morsi's voice. Don't move. His thoughts were in such disarray, the physical stimulation so devastating that Goo Mahng hadn't noticed anything while so focused on chasing his own release. When those warm, firm, familiar arms caught him by surprise and pulled him into an embrace, Goo Mahng's eyes flew open. The shock of it, the overwhelming thrill of it, dragged a moan from him. He saw sparks. For an instant, his head spun. Everything was blurry, yet he instinctively tried to escape. He felt shame, alarm, contrition. By the time Morsi's hand wrapped around him, Goo Mahng was nearly in tears. There was pleasure, yes, but also a despairing reluctance. Morsi's low voice sounded in his ear, just like in his memories, except this time it held hesitation and resentment. This is what you meant when you said you were fine? Chapter 104, Inseparable Hearts. Morsi had realized something was wrong with Goo Mahng a long time ago. It was just that after each round of questioning, Goo Mahng insisted he was fine. Morsi truly didn't want anything to happen between them that shouldn't. Although he was fully aware of what was going on, he did nothing. But the straw hut was too small. He couldn't stop himself from glancing again and again at the man curled up in the corner, as far away from Morsi as he could manage. He knew Goo Mahng was unwell and trying to hide it. He'd even noticed when Goo Mahng's hand started to move. In Morsi's eyes, Goo Mahng had really let go of the past and really wanted nothing more to do with him. So, even this dissolute army ruffian who'd once laughed and said, "It's just sleeping together. It's good as long as we both enjoy it," would rather suffer in silence and touch himself than reveal his arousal to Morsi. This man could smile at Jiang Yeshui and speak nicely with Muzhong Chuyi. He could even be warm and soft to the little bird he brought back mere hours ago. It was only toward Morsi he was cold. Goo Mahng had really let go of him. Morsi wanted to pretend he hadn't seen anything. The pathetic scrap of self-respect and pride he retained urged him to turn aside. But when he heard Goo Mahng's suppressed, painful panting, he couldn't bear it. In the end, even he didn't know what he was feeling as he rose and approached that curled-up silhouette, bending down and taking him into his arms. Goo Mahng's instant flinch of surprise and muted groan set Morsi's heart trembling. Morsi steeled himself, then resolutely broke his vow not to touch Goo Mahng again. He took that pitiful shaft in his hand. Goo Mahng unthinkingly pressed back into Morsi's chest, his jaw tilting, his neck arching. Don't. Close your eyes. Just pretend it isn't me." Morsi's voice was low and husky. Goo Mahng's brow furrowed. Words stuck in his throat. His body was in such a fragile state, but his soul remained unyielding. He wanted to say, "How could it be anyone but you? It's always been you. Morsi, only you." But in the end, this unspeakable love could only ever be just that. Something he wanted to say, and nothing more. One thought the other had severed all ties, and the other thought his own heart made of iron and steel. Each had their reasons, both unwilling to open their hearts to each other again. It didn't matter. Passion and desire were a bottomless abyss, and they had already stepped into that nothingness long ago, tumbling endlessly downward. It was all darkness, and the only thing they could hold onto was each other. Morsi's hand started moving, and the last of Goo Mahng's resistance collapsed. The final mote of clarity he had was just enough to keep him from calling Morsi's name in the heat of passion. He was like a beast trapped in the sea of desire, struggling desperately to free himself from this cage of bygone love. But there was no escape. Morsi knew him too well. He stirred the fire within him too easily, weakening his limbs, drawing moans from his lips. Goo Mahng threw his head back, panting in Morsi's embrace. His disappointing flesh, so prone to tears, had already allowed his eyes to redden, their slender corners misty with unshed tears. He trembled all over, slack in Morsi's arms. Clinging to that last thread of rationality, he hoarsely cried, "Let go of me." His tone was harsh, but his voice was surpassingly soft, quavering like it might melt. He'd meant it to be a fierce rebuke, yet it left his mouth in an unintelligible moan. "Please, let go." In the end, Goo Mahng's cries devolved into pathetic begging. Heaven only knew how much agony he was in, forced to take control of his love at the same time as he wrestled with his primal desire. He'd lost his memories, walked down a path of no return, and had 2 souls carved out of him. He didn't know how long he could keep the awareness the time mirror had returned to him. He didn't know if this clarity the heavens had bestowed in pity would be taken from him just as easily. He had lost so much. This man behind him was the last bit of light and warmth he had to hold. But still, he restrained himself. Let me go. Goo Mahng cried brokenly. Let me go. Don't come closer. I've been tempered with bestial blood, but I'm still human. I would still feel unwilling. I would still regret the path I chose, but I can't turn back, so please, stop torturing me. All that lies before me is a frigid night. Your warmth will make me hesitate, will keep me from moving forward. I'm already a traitor. Morsi, I don't want to be a coward too. As Morsi held him, he too was in pain. Between the two of them, who was supposed to let go? Who was supposed to release the other? Since Goo Mahng didn't want Morsi to touch him, Morsi had uttered that pathetic line, "Just pretend it isn't me." And yet Goo Mahng still rejected him. This jolt of pain made Morsi loosen his grip. Like a swallow freed, Goo Mahng startled up from the ground and made a valiant attempt to get to his feet so he could put some distance between himself and Morsi. But the demon blood was surging inside him, and his desire clouded everything. He felt weak, utterly sapped of strength. After unsteadily lifting his shoulders, he fell right back into the straw. How many unknown pairs of demons had coupled in this hut? The golden straw was suffused with a sharp musk. A muffled whimper issued from Goo Mahng's throat. He turned over, his clear blue eyes wide and vacant. He watched Morsi stand up, and he saw his own reflection in Morsi's eyes. This was honestly pathetic. He knew what a sight he was, while here was Morsi, still so properly attired. Even his lapels remained neatly folded. The fragrance's effects were roiling stronger and stronger inside Goo Mahng. He knitted his brows in pain, lifting a hand to ward him off. He began, He wanted to say, "You need to go away. Stop looking." But the dry heat was rushing upward. He bit down on his lip and didn't finish the sentence. Morsi misunderstood. He thought Goo Mahng had reached out to pull him closer and took hold of Goo Mahng's hand. It was like lava bursting through rock at long last. The whisper of skin against skin finally broke Goo Mahng's self-imposed shackles. He had been strained to his very limit. With this touch, human reason yielded to demon blood. He couldn't get up. Instead, he dragged Morsi down. Caught off guard, Morsi fell heavily on top of him. Their combined weight sank into the soft straw. Goo Mahng arched his neck and grimaced, a muted moan issuing from his throat. He was shaking unbearably. As he pressed close to Morsi, he could feel that long-lost desire, that terrifying hardness pressing into his abdomen through both their clothes. Whatever remaining strength he had fled. His lips quivered, and his blue eyes glimmered with shattered light. He had managed to say, "Let go of me," earlier, but the intense, bestial lust in him now burned red-hot, dyeing the rims of his eyes scarlet. He could only gaze at Morsi's handsome face and bit his lip, unable to say a thing. Instinct made him sincere, urged him to speak the truth. All these years, after all these years, he had done countless ruthless deeds and walked countless bloody roads. He had abandoned everything, save for Morsi. Goo Mahng hadn't abandoned Morsi. He had cut himself away from him. Holding the knife, inch by inch, he'd carved into his own flesh and dug Morsi out of his heart. Only after he'd come out of the mirror with those lost memories did he truly reunite with Morsi. When he'd seen Morsi amidst that bloody rain, his heart had raced frantically. But he buried it all beneath callous apathy. But how could that be the honest truth? He loved him so much, missed him so much. He missed him in the barracks, missed him in battle, missed him in every plaintive melody. In the depths of his shattered memories, he loved him, cherished him, and longed for him. He tore into his lip viciously, tears shining in his eyes. It was partly because of this torturous desire, but even more because he really had been destroyed so utterly. He wanted more than anything to be recklessly selfish for once. He wanted to say, "Just fuck me, okay? Fuck me, please. Save me. I've been soaking in a sea of blood for 8 years. Will you hold me again? Oh, I missed you, Morsi. After I cut you out of my heart, that scar never healed." Goo Mahng blinked, feeling something wet and hot spill from his eyes and drip into his hair. Morsi reached out to touch his face, but he snatched Morsi's hand away. Mustering all his strength and awareness, he rasped, "Fuck me." I'm so sorry. He saw something flash in Morsi's eyes, a light that had nothing to do with lust. Goo Mahng felt as if his heart was being cut out, as if he was being cooked alive. He closed his eyes and swallowed. "I will pretend." Those fingers around Morsi's wrist were shaking. "I will pretend you're someone else." He opened his eyes to see that the spark in Morsi's gaze had gone out. In its place was a frost that could chill one to the bone. He looked deeply wounded, but just as Goo Mahng was accustomed to using laughter to hide his heart, his little Shurdi Morsi had finally learned to use coldness to hide his feelings. His Morsi would never again be the youth who rushed to confess his love on a snowy night. Neither could return to who they used to be. In those black eyes, pain sank beneath the ice that floated up. "As you wish." Morsi ground the words between his teeth. Goo Mahng felt himself flipped over with a terrifying brusqueness. A hand pressed him face down in the straw. His position, and this setting, it was purely a physical release. It had nothing to do with love. The aphrodisiac had left Goo Mahng achingly sensitive. His skin bloomed red in the wake of Morsi's touch. He kept his head down amid the golden stalks, his face pillowed on one soft cheek as he struggled for breath. His mind was a morass. He felt Morsi unceremoniously tear off his clothes. His hands seemed to move with vengeance or with rage. Before he removed Goo Mahng's underclothes, Morsi pressed against him through that final thin layer, hot as a brand, and viciously thrust forward. All right, readers, this is your warning that the next few chapters do contain smut. It takes place from, well, starting at chapter 103, but really intensifies once we get to chapters 104 and 105. Though I have kept a little bit of certain things in, it is mostly, like almost all of it is filtered out. So if you would like to take this opportunity to read it yourself, you can go and read from pages 77 to page 90. That is all of the pages that are mostly going to be excluded from this reading. Otherwise, like I said, there will be a little bit, and then when it ends, well, I think you'll know. Goo Mahng gasped aloud at the feeling he'd craved for so long, crying out hoarsely as his fingers clenched around a handful of straw. How useless he was. This man who had been losing and losing since the battle of Phoenix Cry Mountain, to the imperial court, to political machinations, and now he was losing to desire. Morsi unfastened his own black iron belt buckle with a crisp click. "Imagine whomever you like." Goo Mahng buried his face in the pile of straw, unable to say a single word. He hardened against his will at Morsi's touch. Morsi picked him up and sat him between his legs, facing away, that thin layer of underclothes the last thing separating them. Goo Mahng panted, caged between Morsi's legs. He couldn't help the hoarse moan that spilled from him. But just as he gasped, Morsi's fingers pushed into his mouth. They'd engaged in plenty of outlandish acts in the past. Back then, Goo Mahng had coaxed Morsi along and taught him, step by step. So many years had passed, but Morsi hadn't forgotten these lessons. He was only abstaining from sex. He wasn't all that innocent. It was just that he'd long ago chosen a certain person and had no desire to sleep with anyone else. Those fingers curled into Goo Mahng's mouth and pressed down on his tongue, sliding rhythmically in and out in an unmistakable cadence. At each motion, Goo Mahng let out a muted groan. The demon blood in his body made him more sensitive. His pants were already growing damp. He hazily tried to turn to glimpse the man he loved so deeply, but Morsi removed his own pitch-black hair ribbon and bound it over Goo Mahng's eyes. You... I'm sure you'll feel better if you don't have to see my face. Long lashes trembled beneath the ribbon. Goo Mahng didn't know what kind of expression Morsi wore when he said these words. He hadn't time to consider it before he was pushed into the soft straw. He felt coolness on his lower half. Morsi had torn away the final layer of clothing. Goo Mahng swallowed thickly. He couldn't think anymore. His mind was blank. But this wasn't a comfort to him. His need was about to be satisfied, but his sanity was on the verge of destruction. Morsi didn't kiss him, nor did he lovingly caress him. In the past, Morsi had always approached Goo Mahng with adoration. Why are you shaking so much? Goo Mahng couldn't respond. Morsi was holding him from behind, but Goo Mahng's legs were completely boneless. He was pushing his body to its limit just to stay upright. He wasn't trembling from pleasure or out of fear. He and Morsi had made love so many times. He could still feel the ghost of it, regardless of how many years had passed. His mouth wobbled. It's fine, Goo Mahng forced himself to say. But when Morsi touched the ribbon that covered his eyes, he found it soaked with tears. Does it bother you so much to be with me? Goo Mahng's teeth sank into his wet lower lip. He couldn't see, but he could feel Morsi take hold of his jaw, forcing him to turn his head. His lips were so close, Goo Mahng could feel every breath. Even though the aphrodisiac got you into this state, you still don't want to do this with me. Is that right? Only silence answered him. Goo Mahng, Morsi continued, how you must loathe me. He picked up Goo Mahng and laid him face up, back in the hay. Goo Mahng didn't know what was happening. He reached up to pull the ribbon off and felt his wrist yanked back down. Morsi had been driven crazy. He was such an upright person, but his suppressed emotions twisted his voice almost past recognition. He didn't let Goo Mahng touch the ribbon. Instead, he lifted Goo Mahng's legs and bent to pin him beneath his body. Goo Mahng had nearly bitten through his lip to silence himself, yet the press of that firm and hot chest still wrung a tiny, broken whimper from him. Who are you thinking of? Goo Mahng whimpered. I can't take any more. Even a gentleman could be driven insane. Morsi had never considered himself a gentleman, and Goo Mahng, well, he had really pushed him too far. After barely entering, Morsi pulled out again. Goo Mahng's legs wrapped limply around Morsi's trim waist, shaking and helpless. Is it Lu Jianxing, or someone you met in the Liao Kingdom, or... Morsi gritted his teeth. That black-clad man who convinced you to defect inside the time mirror. No. Goo Mahng's chest heaved. No. Or is it the man who gave you that brocade pouch? The one I've never even heard of. Dazed and near tears, Goo Mahng mumbled, I don't know. As if he hadn't heard a single word Morsi said. I don't know. Neither of them made a sound. Just as Goo Mahng became convinced that Morsi would abandon him, his legs were viciously yanked upward. Morsi didn't know if he was doing this for his own pride, for Goo Mahng's feelings, or so that the two people with inseparable hearts whom fate had sundered could finally find a hard-won excuse to lose themselves in each other. The truth was, in the depths of their hearts, they had yearned for such an excuse for a very long time. Tonight is only to help you with the poison. Don't... Morsi paused. Don't think of it as anything more. Chapter 105, Relieving Poison. Morsi inhaled sharply. So the Liao Kingdom's tempering had extended even to this. As he thought of that brocade pouch with its unknown giver, and that black-clad man in the mirror who'd pushed Goo Mahng to defect, he suddenly felt unsure. Was Goo Mahng's current state merely a side effect of the demon blood in him, or had someone molded him to this purpose? He'd thought the Liao Kingdom only needed a commander and not a plaything, but Goo Mahng's newfound sensitivity set his imagination running wild. He stared down at the face obscured by the black ribbon and withdrew his sticky fingers. Goo Mahng had been panting through parted lips all along, but when Morsi's finger slipped out, his brow furrowed deeply, and he began to shake. Moshi knew the poison had nearly broken him. He would collapse if he didn't find release soon. Moshi couldn't say what he felt. Impatience, worry, heartbreak. Regardless of all else, the physical pleasure was undeniable. Goo Mahng had been gone for 8 years, and he had been abstinent for 8 years until today, when pretense allowed them to entwine once more. Goo Mahng heard a soft sigh right by his ear. "Didn't you say you didn't want it to be me?" He found himself hauled upright and flipped over. "On your hands and knees." Goo Mahng was barely conscious. The two collapsed, panting into the straw. Only then did the realization steal over him. They'd gone to bed together again. Despite everything, they had really done it. Neither spoke, but Moshi slowly and hesitantly took hold of Goo Mahng's limp hand, claiming the afterglow as excuse to interlace their shaking fingers. His mouth was so close to Goo Mahng's temple. He could kiss his cheek if he just dipped his head. Everything seemed so much like how it had been 8 years ago, before this debt of hatred festered between them. The only thing missing was a kiss, but that kiss could never fall. Goo Mahng's breathing gradually slowed, and his lashes fluttered weakly. "Don't pull out." Moshi blinked and stilled. "In a while, the demon blood will absorb it. Once it's absorbed, then—" He paused and hoarsely said, "Then I'll be fine." But Goo Mahng knew this entanglement had merely satisfied his bodily desires. That hollow ache in his heart would forever eat at his bones, at his marrow, a lifetime without a cure. At daybreak, they prepared to leave the hut. Goo Mahng didn't say a word after it was over. When he rose to get dressed, his hands were still shaking. Moshi glanced at him and saw, by the weak morning light, that a faint flush lingered on his earlobe beneath his loose black hair. Goo Mahng kept his head down as he straightened his lapels, his inky lashes lowered, but unable to hide the redness of his eyes. The two of them took great care with their clothes, perhaps out of embarrassment, or perhaps because they worried the others would notice something amiss. Fortunately, they had not kissed, so there were no love bites to hide. Moshi paused. "Your body." "It's the Fey Wolf," Goo Mahng spoke without inflection, unwilling to elaborate. "The bat demon incense was just as effective on me." He paused for a moment, then stood up. In the past, Goo Mahng was always a bit feeble after they slept together, sometimes even stumbling. Moshi instinctively reached out to help him up, but Goo Mahng flung his hand off. He sniffed, his nose still red. "There's no need. I'm fine," he said hoarsely. His body had truly changed. These days, he could recover quickly. Holding the ribbon in his mouth, he gathered and tied up his long hair. His lips parted as he sighed. "I hope you'll excuse my behavior, Shizun." Moshi's chest felt tight, but he closed his eyes and replied, "I said it was only for the poison." His voice was low. "Don't think any more of it." Goo Mahng smiled. "It's just that, considering our current relationship, it must have been a sacrifice to help me. I can't help but apologize. Also, I behaved rather embarrassingly." Eyes, the blue of deep lakes, were cast down as Goo Mahng fastened the hidden weapon compartment in his sleeve. "If it's at all possible, Shizun should try to forget about it." Goo Mahng. Oh my God. As he spoke, he pulled aside the bamboo curtain. Seeing that the bat demons were all still in their huts, he strolled off toward the cave where Muzhong Chuyi and the others waited. Pale sunlight filtered through the black smoke over Bat Island, filling the woods with a clear coldness. Moshi turned to glance back at the thatched hut they had spent the night in. What had passed here mere hours ago was like a mirage. The excuse that allowed them to entwine so desperately was gone. In the daylight, he was Chonghua's Shizun, and Goo Mahng was a prisoner and slave of Shihe Manor, the great traitor to the nation. Neither of them would speak again of what happened last night, and neither would assign it any more meaning than an ephemeral dream. In the end, Moshi swept a final look around the room. He let the bamboo curtain fall and caught up to Goo Mahng. The two of them still smelled like each other, yet acted like strangers as they trekked back in perfect silence. The life crystal in Morsi's possession had shown Yue Chengqing's condition to be much improved. Just as it predicted, when they returned to the cave, they found Yue Chengqing sitting against the wall, awake. But they were surprised to find Yue Chengqing's head lowered, tears rolling down his cheeks. His usually bright and shining eyes were swollen from crying, and he wiped his tears away over and over with the back of his hand. "Fourth uncle, I really wasn't messing around." Still sobbing, he pathetically tried to explain himself to Muzhong Chuyi, who was standing beside him with an icy mien. "I just wanted to find a cure for you. Every year, before my birthday, you say you don't feel well, that you don't want to come. You what? You think you've lost your wits?" Muzhong Chuyi swept his sleeves back and berated him through clenched teeth. "Do you not know your own worth? You're so unbelievably foolish as to come alone to these damned dream butterfly islands." Jiang Yeshui was sitting off to the side. He was weak from giving blood to Yue Chengqing, but he still coughed and said, Now, Chengqing meant well. Xiaoju, he's barely woken up. You don't have to scold him so." Muzhong Chuyi shook off the hand Jiang Yeshui had laid on his sleeve. "I'll scold my own nephew if I please," he snapped. "Is it your place to act like a saint?" He turned back to rail at Yue Chengqing. "Forget about bringing me medicine before your birthday. If you were a bit less lucky, this time next year I'd be bringing flowers to your grave. What will it be, peonies or roses? Yue Chengqing, are you trying to kill me over stress? Don't you know this life of yours came at the price of your mother's? Yet you hold it so cheaply." Yue Chengqing looked up, his piteous sobs dying in his throat. He stared at Muzhong Chuyi, eyes wide with a smarting pain. No one present, neither Morsi, Goo Mahng, nor even Yue Chengqing himself, had ever seen Muzhong Chuyi so furious that the rims of his eyes were scarlet. So Muzhong Chuyi had been holding back all this time, maintaining his outward impassivity out of concern for Yue Chengqing's health. If he was turning such rage on Yue Chengqing now, the goo worms must be entirely dealt with. But Muzhong Chuyi was already sick, and he had used forbidden techniques to keep Yue Chengqing alive, injuring his heart vein in the process. As fury filled him, he began to cough. At the sight of Yue Chengqing's expression, Jiang Yeshui knew Muzhong Chuyi had said too much. He reached out to pull Muzhong Chuyi's sleeve again. Muzhong Chuyi's face drew taut with anger as he shoved Jiang Yeshui away. "I've told you not to touch me." He hadn't held back at all, and Jiang Yeshui had lost too much blood. He'd just been helping Yue Chengqing and wasn't sitting in his wheelchair. This shove sent him crumpling to the ground. Everyone around the cave was stunned into silence. Yue Chengqing stared blankly at Jiang Yeshui, who'd collapsed with his wrists still bleeding. Yet Jiang Yeshui seemed to not want to argue with Muzhong Chuyi. He'd always been humble and courteous, considerate, and accepting of others' feelings. He tried to push himself up, lowering his lashes as he murmured, "If you're angry, don't take it out on Chengqing. If you're unhappy, vent it on me instead. You're the senior and we are the juniors, so it's fine if you push me or scold me." For some reason, Muzhong Chuyi grew even more incensed at this. His hands were shaking. He pointed at Jiang Yeshui, his face alarmingly pale. "You—" Jiang Yeshui dropped his gaze to the ground. "Whatever Xiaoju likes." Muzhong Chuyi was incandescent with rage. "How dare you!" He just raised his hand when a trembling voice called out, "Why are you always so mean?" A deathly silence followed. No one expected this shout to be targeted at Muzhong Chuyi. Even the man himself was momentarily stunned, his sharp phoenix eyes flitting about before it dawned on him. He slowly turned around. Tears streamed down Yue Chengqing's face as he stared at his uncle with eyes full of heartbreak and grief. He lowered his voice, but it was saturated with disappointment and despair. "Do you only care for my mother? No matter how devoted we are to you, whether me or him, you only rage at us and blame us." All color had drained from Muzhong Chuyi's face. It was white as paper. Yue Chengqing's features crumbled in his sad little face. Speaking to his uncle like this hurt him more surely than a knife to the gut. But his uncle's harsh words had wounded him so deeply. Even his sobs had changed in tone. For the first time, he stood in front of Jiang Yexue. "If anyone's at fault here, it's me, isn't it? He got hurt so badly and lost so much blood. All to save me. How could you still strike him and yell at him?" Jiang Yexue shook his head. "Chunqing." Mu Zhongchuyi's lips were bloodless. His gaze flashed, his mouth moving as if he was struggling immensely with some unspoken grievance. In the end, his fingers curled into fists, and only a few bitten-off syllables passed his lips. "Yue Chunqing, what do you know?" His piercing gaze fixed upon Jiang Yexue's face. Mu Zhongchuyi's resentment was so deep the rims of his eyes were red, and he spoke through gritted teeth. "He's no more than a bastard." Now it was not only Yue Chunqing's expression that changed, but Mo Xi and Goo Mahn's as well. They'd known Mu Zhongchuyi for some time, and though it was true that he was aloof, they hadn't found him a monster who didn't know right from wrong. Neither had understood why he would be named one of Chonghua's 3 poisons. But when this blade of a word fell from his mouth and sank to the hilt in Jiang Yexue's heart, they suddenly realized that Mu Zhongchuyi's resentment was far too harsh and cutting. Jiang Yexue's lashes trembled. He closed his eyes, then lowered his head and fell silent. Yue Chunqing turned tearful eyes upon Mu Zhongchuyi. "Fourth uncle!" His voice shook. The syllables strained like a bowstring, drawn until the arrow flew. He dissolved into sobs. "Is your heart made of stone?" My God. Oh, you guys. I don't know. These chapters, the opening to volume 4, meat bun. Shit. Oh my God. I don't even know where to freaking begin. Okay. So let's just go ahead and start my notes. I don't know. And I'm not even going to say a lot because I read entirely too much to speak on a lot. So yeah. Well, you guys, we finally have it. We know what's going on with the Bat Queen. Oh, let me just say, I love Goo Mahn's little technique that he used, his own invention, the illusion butterfly transformation technique. That was really cool. But okay, so here we have it. The Bat Queen, Wu Yan, resting in this blood pool since Rong has been stolen. And it's preserving her, washing away, some of that old wrinkliness that she has. And since she doesn't have Rong, she decides that it's time to dual cultivate with someone and then have the rest of her tribe dual cultivate as well, so she could absorb their sex, essentially, is how I'm going to word it. And of course, we have it. She finds interest in Mo Xi, and Goo Mahng has to think on the fly of a reason to not sleep with him, which Mo Xi was very upset about. But I mean, what can we do with that? So we have it where they're in this thatched hut finally, and because of the technique that Goo Mahng had used on her, the soul recording spell, they were able to really dig into her story. So we know that she fell in love with Headmaster Chantang, this person who was supposedly completely destroyed by a demon beast. But yeah, so her home got invaded by another tribe of bats or another tribe of demons, and she, flew away. Her family died, her mother, her sister. And she came across Headmaster Chantang, and instead of harming her like she thought, he ended up nursing her back to health. And just in this time that they were alone in this moving island that apparently has all the 4 seasons in its trees and fruits, she naturally, of course, makes sense, falls in love with this man. He's the only man before her. She's the only woman before him. But he doesn't fall in love with her. And this is a problem for her. This is the thing I be talking about in C-dramas and stuff, when the girl just can't accept the fact that the man doesn't love her. But it's even worse because she's a demon. And so their feelings are magnified, right? So anyway, y'all heard it. We read it. I don't need to review everything. But we see that, okay, so this once love and infatuation turned into an obsession. And she thinks that, she was betrayed by this man because he didn't keep his promise, to be on the doll. But here's my thing. Even if he was on the doll and then later found love, that is what it is. To me, first off, it's not betrayal, because he never had any feelings for her in the first place. But also, he doesn't owe her anything. This man nursed her back to health, brought her from the brink of freaking death. And he was very kind to her, and he rejected her politely, and then did what he could only resort to since she wasn't taking no for an answer. So it's like, what else could he do in that moment? But the thing is, like, just because a person starts one way doesn't mean they have to remain that way for the rest of their lives. So even if he did walk the path of the doll, like Shen Qiao, who had no interest in romance or anything, eventually he ended up finding himself in love with Yan Wushi, even if those words were never exchanged between the two of them, at least in the book. So it's like, even if Chen Tang fell in love and decided to take on a different path, that's his right to do so. So we see this Bat Queen, and we know why now, that she has banned men from the island, doesn't want anything to do with them, and if they come, then she's going to turn them into little Chen Tang puppets. Okay, fine, cool. But we also have this fragrance that she released into the air that smells like grass, lotus pond, and summer and honey. And it's intoxicating. And it makes people, it's like the ephemera that Mu Zhonglian be smoking. And it makes these demons want to get it on. Ah, baby. So, which that's nothing. That's fine. But the thing is that it affects Goo Mahng, since he has Fey Wolf inside of him. And so we see him in this hut struggling so difficultly. And of course, it doesn't start that way. Let me just first go back really quick. After they learned the story about the Bat Queen, Goo Mahng was really harsh to Morsi, to be like, have you ever felt resentment to me because you ever think that I don't love you, and pushing literally at his scar, at his wound. And I'm just like, Goo Mahng, I'm still on your team, and I understand that you're doing these things for many reasons, but you're making it so hard to defend you, though. But it was nice to see Morsi at least finally snap at him rather than holding everything in, because he deserves to snap. Goo Mahng has been so mean to him. So, that is what it is. Anyway, now let's go back to the point of Goo Mahng basically being in heat. And I even said something like that in the book, like in the Omegaverse, even though that's not really the world that we're in. We're dealing with beasts, so there are different species. And then a beast was infused into Goo Mangh's body. So this is as close to OBA as we'll get, but it's not OBA. And oh man, he didn't want Morsi to see him this way. And so he's trying to hide in a corner, jacking off as slowly and quietly as possible. But meanwhile, Morsi is like, bruh, I know there's something wrong. But he was trying to leave it alone. His pride was hurt from Goo Mangh's taunting. But then finally, he couldn't take it anymore. And so in the end, they end up sleeping together. And my God. So I don't remember the parts that I edited out for YouTube, but I'm just going to, talk about it. And if you don't get it, well, you just don't get it. You on Patreon, you got everything. But here we have it that, Morsi was like, just pretend it's someone else. And even though in Goo Mangh's heart, he really truly doesn't want anyone else, eventually he's like, yeah, I'll just pretend it's someone else. But then even in the midst of them, being intimate, he calls Morsi's name. And Morsi is like, you sure you want to call my name? And he covers his eyes with the blindfold so that Goo Mahng can't see him while they're having sex in this hut. And we just see like Goo Mangh's rationality completely go away. And he's tormented by Morsi for a bit before Morsi actually does, what he's supposed to be doing. And it's just interesting because we have like this in and out of, yes, the sex, but also the heart of the two characters. And I love that Rou Bao wrote that in, not to say that you can't just have a scene that's just pure smut and that is what it is, but because of the complex feelings that they hold, it made perfect sense. And I was glad that she touched on those feelings that they were having, even in the midst of them being intimate with each other. And just showing us that detachment that they were making, that line that they were drawing, while at the same time blurring the lines and setting themselves up for failure, if you ask me, when it comes to, you know, trying to keep their hearts out of it. But yeah, we just have them having sex with each other. And it was so sad because Morsi actually got excited when Goo Mahng was like, please screw me, you know, and as soon as Goo Mahng saw the light in his eyes, he knew what it meant. And he was like, no, I don't want him to think that there's hope. The only path for me is death. And so I am glad that we got a bit more, which I knew it already, but just the fact that Meat Bun, it finally said it. Goo Mahng sees no way out for him. His path is death. Like once the emperor is done with him, he's going to die. And so we know that he's being cruel to Morsi because he wants Morsi to hate him. He wants him to loathe him, to let him go, to move on, so that when it comes time for Goo Mahng to die, that it won't hurt him. And that may sound awful. And I know that there are so many people who absolutely were like, you know, Goo Mahng was so mean and hurtful to Morsi, and it'll probably continue happening. We'll see. But I understand, you know, especially after not even just thinking about that, but when we consider everything that Goo Mahng has went through in his entire freaking life, all of that compiled on top of that, and then knowing that there is no future for me and Morsi, so it's better if he hates me. I get why he's being mean. Do I like it? Is it right? No and no, but I get it. And so, you know, I'm just glad that we got a glimpse of Goo Mahng's heart. I'm going to go specifically to page 72 because, you know, we have it here where he's saying specifically, let me go. Don't come closer. I've been tempered with bestial blood, but I'm still human. I would still feel unwilling. I would still regret the path I chose. So we know he regrets the path he chose. And he says, though, but I can't turn back. So please stop torturing me. All that lies before me is a frigid night. Your warmth will make me hesitate, will keep me from moving forward. I'm already a traitor. Morsi, I don't want to be a coward too. And even further, you know, I'm not going to reread all this stuff, but even going on page 75, where we have it, of course, not out loud, but he admits to the readers that he still cherishes, he misses, he longs for Morsi. So I'm glad that we got to, you know, get that. And we keep seeing this like tug and pull between the two of them while they're having sex. And then we also have this thing with Goo Mangh's body, which I think I really need to elaborate on for the YouTubers because that may have been edited out. But Goo Mangh's body is like a woman's at this point because he can secrete fluid from his hole. Essentially, you know how women get wet, we self-lubricate. He has that ability due to him being fused with a beast, the Fey wolf. And beasts, it says they know no gender, they know no sex, right? So they could just get, you know, slick like that. If we were in an Omegaverse, produce slick. So, yeah, his body is like a woman's in a natural born woman's in this case. And it's just quite interesting because Morsi was like, hold up, how are you wet? That's so funny. Anyway, I'm not going to talk anymore about the sex scene. Both of them are just like, this means absolutely nothing, but of course it means everything. Oh my gosh, everything. And I love the fact that Meat Bun kept mentioning, like, this was just their excuse, you know, to finally give in to the desire that they've been craving. And we know that they've been craving it since Goo Mahng came back. So you know. Then we have this cave scene. Oh my gosh. Where Muzhong Chuyi is berating Yue Chengqing to the fullest, mad at him, showing concern for his health, and like, did you want me to be sending flowers to your grave? Like, what the heck are you doing? Your mother died for you. And we show this care and concern, which I still believe that there's a part of him that just naturally cares for Yue Chengqing. But at this moment, it's worded in a way like he only cares for Yue Chengqing just because he is Mu Zhonghuang's offspring. And it gets to the point where, you know, he's yelling at Yue Chengqing, who just woke up. And Jiang Yexue is like, hey, like, chill, my guy. And then he's mean to Jiang Yexue. To the point that, to my complete and absolute surprise, we finally see Yue Chengqing stand up and yell at Muzhong Chuyi and stand up for Jiang Yexue. So it's not to say that this event of Jiang Yexue saving his life and all of that stuff has changed Yue Chengqing and Jiang Yexue's relationship. It hasn't changed that awkwardness. But at the very least, we know that Yue Chengqing is truly a good person. He is. He's just been fed things throughout his entire life about his half-brother. But in this moment, of course he is going to stand up for him and finally be like, Muzhong Chuyi, you are being awful. Especially after he called him a bastard. Oh, Muzhong Chuyi. I'm glad he finally said what was in his heart, because it needed to be said to finally put it out in the open. But God, he was so harsh. Anyway, y'all, I don't have anything else to say. Honestly, this was a lot. Just, I hope you guys enjoyed the reading. Remember, if you want the full smut, and you're not subscribed to my Patreon, you will need to go subscribe. I do have a $3 tier. I believe it's Head Disciple, and a $2 tier, Cultivator in Training. I'm not trying to like force people. Of course, I mean, I can't force you guys, but I am strongly encouraging you. Like, if you have the funds, I mean, if you don't, you know, if you do, but barely, I wouldn't even worry about it. But if you have the funds to spare $2 or $3, I totally recommend it. Because this smut scene, and probably all of them, at least concerning Meat Bun in this series, there's so much in them. Like, it's not just the sex that's there. Like, there are vital details that are important. And even though I'm going to be discussing things in the end, that doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily cover every single thing. But there are important details that are happening that are you're getting more insight into the characters and their mindsets and what's going on. And so I do encourage you all, if you can spare that, please spare it. Yeah, I guess that's all. I do truly hope that you guys enjoyed the reading, though. And oh my God, it was a bit talking personally now, reading the oh, I'm sorry. I know there was one more thing I wanted to talk about. That was my notes. Goo Mahng, Mo Xi finally admitting that, in his head, of course, that Goo Mahng was his comrade, his friend, his beloved, and his god. So there we have it again, that he put Goo Mahng on a pedestal, which is why everything hurts so freaking bad. And I just want to say, on a personal perspective, on a personal level, I know exactly what it is like to view someone as your god and then be so utterly hurt and devastated and stabbed by them. Because ultimately, that is how I viewed like my mother, because I lived in such a life of isolation with not really having close connections with any family. She was the person I looked up to like the most, even though I felt like I could never measure up to her. But like, when I almost turned 28 and the realizations of everything and like the verbal and emotional abuse finally hit and I understood it, when I tell you guys, my world crumbled. It crumbled to the point that, like, I understand when Moshi was, after they came out of the time mirror and was like, I mean, I could just die right here. Like, it crumbled to that degree. I was like, I can just die. Because when gods are meant to be worshipped, right? They are idols. Depending on what religion you follow, they are idols, while one is just, the main God that you worship, like in Christian, religion. And, when I was growing up, yeah, that's exactly what my mother was. She was my idol. And she was my golden calf, if you will. So here Goo Mahng is Moshi's golden calf. And then finally he was let down by it. And it was just so eye-opening. But also, again, meat bun for the win, for being able to capture the realness of people and how we view those that we love so inexplicably, and just everything is, oh my, this is masterful, okay? Just like some things, I know some people are upset because they feel like meat bun gives a lot of dog blood, which is just essentially violence and pain for the readers for no freaking reason. But here, one thing I can say about her is that she tunes in to the human heart so freaking well. I love it so much. She's as good as writing out human emotions and the complexities of them when teeter-tottering between, opposites, as good as I would say that Mang sure is at writing fighting scenes and really diving into cultivation. That's how I feel about Meat Bun. Anyway, this is enough, you guys. This is enough. I do want to go ahead and let you all know that my I think I told y'all this in another live. No, I didn't. I don't know. My grandpa's funeral is this coming Saturday. So of course I'll be reading for the remainder of this week or whatever. But normally I do read on Fridays as well. So that way, like Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so that you guys can have an extra long video. At least Patreon is on Monday. It might be a different day for you on YouTube, but that won't be happening, obviously, because we have to drive there on Friday, be at the funeral on Saturday, and then we're basically doing a turn and burn. But I am going to talk to my dad I don't have the money for this, but I am going to ask him if maybe he can help me out a little bit so that I can stay until Sunday or Monday, because I don't want to just like be there for the funeral and then turn around and come back home. I want to actually spend time with my dad and my siblings, and the rest of my family, so we can grieve together for a bit and hopefully, celebrate his life even after, go eat, something like that. So I'm just letting you all know that I don't know, after you get your final video for this week, I don't know when your next video will be. It could be as early as Tuesday, or it could be as late as Wednesday. But that's fine with me because we finished volume 3 in a week. So we're already a week ahead of schedule. There's some wiggle room for me to do, whatever I need to do. So yeah, I just wanted to give you guys that update. And thank you all so much for your patience and understanding. I am doing a lot better. Sometimes I still have sad moments. Like yesterday, I just was randomly sad and I was like, why am I so sad? And then I remembered, oh yeah, my dad was like sending pictures like, which ones should we have for the obituary? And then I was just sad and then crying later, hours after that. But I'm doing good, and I'm glad that I have this community here, because like you guys' comments and interactions and stuff, that really keeps me going. It makes me happy and it makes me feel like I'm not alone. So I just wanted to thank you all for continuing to engage. And again, please don't worry about me in recording and stuff. I'm not going past my limit. This is helping me. So that's all I will say now, because I've talked way too much and this video is about to be 3 hours long. What? Okay?